Well, hello there, Whisky people. Welcome to this glorious Saturday afternoon where we are in the UK. Hopefully, I find you well wherever you are in the world. I know this is a little bit early for you guys over in the States. Probably perfect timing for people elsewhere in the world on the other side. But thank you very much for joining, whoever is in right now. Pretty awesome to see you all here. Today's little live stream, I don't do these often enough, I know, but I've brought in a good friend of mine now, Chris from the Dram Team, and we're going to be tasting through their most recent box. But before we get into that, obviously, I'll say hello to a few people that are in the chat right now. This is going live on YouTube and Facebook, so please do bear with me if I miss some comments. I do have a good friend of mine moderating today, good friends, I should say, really, Anthony and Nikki at New Dram Drinker. Please do go and check them out if you're watching this live or on the replay. And I'll say hello to a few people and also talk about this bottle I've got here as a little bit of a palate cleanser. But yeah, so let's see who's in. I'm going to talk to everybody. We've got some people on Facebook, some people on YouTube. That's pretty awesome. We've got Menno at Multi-Mission. He's going to try and catch as much as he can, but he's got kids. Yeah, completely understand. Obviously, if everyone's watching, you might have kids, you might not. Please do concentrate on your family. If you can join, that's great. If you can watch on the replay, also great. We've got Lee J. Brown is in. Thank you very much for joining, my friend. Sam Clark, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you, sir. Greg is in. Thank you very much for joining, Greg. Of course, New Dram Drinker is in. He's the mod for him and Nikki are the mod for today. Peter Hunt is in. Good afternoon to you. Whiskey Straight Al, he's in as well. Thank you very much for coming in, my friend. David Owen, thank you very much for joining. And of course, Dan Brown over on Facebook. So awesome to see everybody in on Facebook and on YouTube. It's super slick, this whole StreamYard vibe. Loving it that we can even hook up like this. We've got a few more people just joined as well. Erwin, thank you very much for coming in. Kresimir in, thank you very much. Shinjuku Sensei, Dale, thank you very much for coming in. Too Slow, thank you very much indeed. And Red Sox 367 says, hello everyone, having a beer, watching this live stream. Thank you very much. Okay, so before we get Chris in, we've got a big tasting today. We've got it's not a heavy tasting. A lot of it is less than sort of 46%, 43%. One big heavy hitter, but something I like to do, and a lot of us like to do, is do a bit of a kind of palate resetter, something that you know and love. For me today, that's the Abelard 10. Tend to lean towards more of a Glenfiddich 12, but I don't have any of it in right now. So cheers to you all. I'll have a quick sip of this. Nice. It's a good way of making sure that your palate's on point. So if you try something like this and you think, oh, that tastes a bit weird today, then your tasting might go a bit skew-if. But let's get that out of the way, and we'll get Chris in to say hello and talk about what we're going to be doing today. There we go. Chris is in. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hey, Ben. Hello, everyone else. I'm doing very well, thank you. Excited to be here.
How are you finding the lockdown?
Surprisingly busy. Is that okay? I feel very lucky. Obviously, drinking at home has become pretty trendy, so keeping busy with the business. And I'm also used to working at home, so for me, it's not that different kind of day-to-day life, except obviously we're not allowed to go anywhere. So yeah, I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's not been too bad. I'm one of the lucky people that gets to work from home and still get paid in full. And obviously doubly lucky because I've got a garden at least. Now, I know a lot of people don't have gardens. When I get to just leave the house for a bit and go and sit in the sun, must be a real shame if you can't do that sort of thing. So it's good that we can meet up like this, really, especially in a live stream vibe, and sort of get people in who maybe are just sort of sitting around looking for something to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both on a personal basis, our local whiskey club has met more in the past 5 weeks than we ever did before. We were managing about probably once a month. With people having kids and other things going on, it can be difficult to get together. But ironically, in lockdown, we've managed to get together once a week to share some drams ever since it started. And I think a lot of people are probably finding the same thing. So it's cool to see a sort of step change in how people are using online stuff to interact. I think that's something that will probably last even after lockdown. And it's seen some really interesting stuff happening with like Somerton Club's Whiskey Festival, and just all brands pivoting to online stuff. So it's really interesting amongst, I feel for a lot of people in the industry, because a lot of the industry is really struggling, like from both the on-trade, like production side of the whiskey industry. Bottling is really difficult right now, which most people wouldn't be aware of, but people are not being able to get bottles and therefore having to stop selling and that kind of thing because of their supply chain breaking down. So there's some really difficult times, but I think as with always with the whiskey industry, there's also just a load of positivity. We were just talking about this beforehand with Anthony and Nikki from New Dram Drinker. The whiskey industry is a really positive thing to be part of, and I think that is continuing even right now, with people sort of reaching out to each other online more than ever, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen quite a lot of. I've been part of a lot of these tasting packs, which I think people didn't really think they could do before. Like, people might not be interested in it, but it's worked out really well. With my local club, we were planning on having our first official whiskey tasting with McMira, and when that couldn't happen, McMira plugged a load of effort and money into a platform very similar to what I'm using today. A bit more professional theirs is, I have to say, but they arranged for us all to be able to purchase our set, which is obviously, like, if they were going to come to us, they were going to bring these bottles, but it ended up being really popular. And all it was just us talking on screen for a bit. In fact, Anthony and Nikki were on it as well. But all the people watching in a private YouTube is exactly what, like I said, what Somerton are going to do. But I think for theirs, it's like 40 quid you need to pay, but they'll send you something like, they're planning on like 10 or 15 drams plus snacks. And then, you can dip in and dip out as you see fit. There's going to be some interaction, they reckon, as well. But yeah, people are really pushing the technology, and I'm kind of glad it happened now in 2020 and not like 8 years ago. The whole infrastructure would have collapsed. I think we wouldn't have been able to do anything like this.
No, that's quite true. Actually, I hadn't even thought of that, but you're right. Like, 8 years ago, I didn't have a business 8 years ago, and certainly I don't think the internet could have handled it. So. Yeah, in some ways, maybe it is good timing, if there's ever good timing for a global pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to what you said about what's happening with me, I do have work I can get on with, but not a lot. So it's eking that out at the right level, and I might end up drying up at some point. But
I mean, how much can you get away with working on no nonsense whiskey? You're supposed to be doing your day job.
That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I'm now like answering emails during the day and things like that, which normally I would have to do late at night, which it suits me fine. And I even said, like, if they ended up doing a furlough scheme at my day job, I would volunteer for it, because if I got paid even 80%, I could then fully concentrate on the channel and not have to feel guilt about the work. I've got a couple of questions in, but before we start, I'll just go into that. Ben Marnick's in. I'm going to say hello to a few more people later on, but let me pop up the question on the screen. He says, hi, all, paid £33 for our whiskey tasting on the 7th. There you go. Less a question, but more like, what's going on? That's awesome. And Kresimir says, please tell me more about Abelard 10. I can buy it here for £35. Somehow I feel it's a bit overpriced. Yes, 100% that's overpriced.
25 quid? Normally?
Yeah, I mean, it's 25 quid normally, but I see it in supermarkets on yellow ticket deal for 20 quid frequently throughout the year, especially at Christmas time. I would never buy it for any more than 25.
Being retired, I don't know if that was true. I put the one with the stick there. At some point, it was really, really, really cheap, and I was told it was because it was going out of line, but it's still around as far as I'm aware.
Absolutely. I'll say hello to a few more people. We'll get stuck into the first one.
Sure, I've noticed that the Dram Team are online, so if anyone's confused about that, that's not me. If anyone's also noticed that we're suddenly really, really proactive and engaged on social media, it's because I finally got my act together, and I have a couple of guys called Ed and Evan who are really helping me out accelerate our presence and just actually to use it, because for 4 long years I've neglected social media because I've been too busy running around doing other things in the background and hiding. So we're trying to get a bit more out there now and engage a little bit more and get a bit more active in the community. So I imagine that will be Ed on the Dram Team account there. Hello, Ed.
Hello to Ed. But say hello to Lee, to David as well. Flying Hussar is in. Peated Pete, thank you very much. Greg says, how do no nonces? I think that's the first time anyone's ever given me a colloquial term, so that's nice. Who else have we got?
No nonsense.
I need some work.
look that up.
There's Abelard 10 or Glengoyne. Sorry, Abelard 12 or Glengoyne 10 for the next buy. Tough call.
Glengoyne 10. Wait, hang on. Abelard 12. Is that what you had? I think you had the Abelard 10. That's the one.
Yeah, he's asking 12. 12 is an exceptional dram.
Okay, I don't know that one.
Yeah, I would say the Abelard personally, but buy both. We've got Chris at the last drop in. Thank you very much for coming in. Mahesh is in. Max is in. He's there you go. Mahesh is from Nepal on Facebook. Thank you very much. And Gregor says pun was intended. Okay, well, get into the actual tasting itself then. Just a little give back to you guys. Obviously, if you don't know, my involvement with the Dram Team is that I have been a subscriber of theirs since pretty much the start, since August 2016, give or take.
I can't believe it's been that long, but yes.
Yeah, coming up to 4 years. So pretty much when I started the channel, paying subscriber, and it's genuinely a service I believe in, which is why I do these videos every month. And this month, I decided that at the very last minute, thank you for Chris for being able to do it, that we would
cancel then.
Exactly. But I have a long-standing deal where you guys can get 20% off your first delivery if you're in the UK. I think you're still UK only, aren't you, Chris?
Right now we are, but on that note, we have finally managed to get permission from DPD to ship whiskey into Europe. So starting as soon as we can get it organised with the systems and in the back end of the website and the warehouse and that, we'll be able to ship into Europe for somewhere between £5 to £15 more of postage, depending on where you live. Like there's just bizarre trends in which countries are really expensive to post in, which aren't. So some of them, basically, the harder it is to get to in a vehicle, the more expensive it is. That's the general. But that's really exciting because I think it's really hard to get stuff like this in Europe, and there's a lot of more fans out there who hopefully would be really interested in getting hold of it and then joining in with stuff like this as well. So hopefully that'll be coming soon. But for right now, it's UK only. So I've also got a bit of a surprise, which is that I went into the website earlier and edited the discount. So for today only, for this call, it's actually a third off. So it's £10 off the normal box price. So it's 20 quid for the first box right now. Which is probably a similar. Did I even give you a discount that generous when you joined me? You said 10% earlier. I said that was quite stingy of me. I think when I started,
maybe it was a bit more. To be fair, I can't remember. But I think it was a bit cheaper back then as well, wasn't it? Like it was
more aspirational price point from but it was just not sustainable. We probably lost money, to be honest, on a launch back then. Like I didn't. We had a few troubles with like pricing the postage and stuff, and yeah, so we're a bit more than we were then, but certainly we were never on sale at 20 quid since the launch. So if you think about trying it out, just try it out and see what you think. And at the moment, you will get the box that we are tasting now. I think there's about 30 left. Yeah, you'll be able to try the Glen collection yourself, and then you can always watch this on replay.
Perfect. There you go. And what we're going to do is we go through these. I'm going to plonk the name of the whiskey up on the screen, so if anyone joins us later, they'll know what we're drinking. But as Chris said, if you are on Europe and you're interested in looking at this, then make sure you follow him. Yeah, make sure you follow him on all their socials, and you can see when that's going to happen. Because I'm sure you'll announce it on your socials when it happens. Yeah,
we probably will. We're going to do some trials with a few like private tastings and stuff that have inquired about it in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll see if once we know it works properly, we'll get it going. There might be some issues at the moment with shipping into Europe just because everything's a bit delayed. The UK one's working really well. I've been really impressed with how our suppliers have kept it going, but I think Europe's a bit trickier. So yeah, give us a few weeks to iron out a few wrinkles, then hopefully we'll have that set up and we'll let people know about it.
Perfect. And of course, as you might have seen me then, make sure if you are drinking along with us today, or if you're drinking anything, beers, whatever, make sure you stay hydrated. Actually, something weird I got in the post today from the other day from Somerton. I got some canned water.
Is it fire water?
Yeah, Lark Fire.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, I've heard of them. Someone mentioned to me recently.
So I might give that a go if we end up adding water to any of these. So let's get into the first one then, shall we, Chris? Lest we be extending it. I'm sure people are thirsty now.
We've got the ticker, we've got the card. Media experience.
This is the Glenrothes 10-year-old Seleo collection. I'm actually very interested in this because I don't have a very good history with Glenrothes. They've always been okay. They've been very Jura-like for me. I've not tried many of them, to be fair, but the ones I've tried have been a bit like, it's okay, but
I think we've had some that were hit and miss. I've had some absolutely incredible ones, the older vintages, and some of like maybe single cask ones or independent ones actually. But the old core range, before they used to do vintages for people's context, so they used to or reserve bottlings, which were sort of essentially NAS. So we've had the sherry cask reserve. I think we had a 91 vintage in at some point, or 97 vintage. I can't remember exactly, but the new one is age statement. So I think there's 10, 12, probably 15, 18. I'm not sure. And there's one in the middle, which is like Whiskey Maker's Cut or something like that. So I'm interested to try it. And just for context for people, like I don't actually try these. That's not how I pick them. I just pick 6 whiskies that I, as a whiskey drinker, I'm really interested to try and that fit the theme, and then obviously fit overall the budget that we have for the box each month. So I haven't actually tried these before. So I think hopefully that's it's fun for me. I don't know if it's fun for you as well, but hopefully it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the fun facts is that in all my nearly, well, let's say 3.5, but nearly 4 years, we've only had, I think, 2 of the same drams come in. And one of them, I don't know if you remember this, I can't remember what it was, but I emailed you saying, "Oh yeah, this is the first thing," and you was like, "What? It's not a repeat." And I was like, "Yeah, it is." And like it was just a complete accident, like it just happened.
Yeah, I think what had happened was I'd switched a dram out at the last minute. I think I swapped like the Loch Lomond 12 for the Moray 12. We actually both made it Loch Lomond because it fitted the box theme better. But when I switched it, I didn't go back and double check if we'd done it before. So it wouldn't have been a repeat originally, but it ended up accidentally being a repeat. But I think at that point, you were literally probably the only person who'd had it twice because it had been in the, the second ever box or something like that. So hopefully we're still on a reasonably hot streak of having only repeated like maybe 3 or 4 whiskies. So let's keep hoping that the whiskey industry keeps producing new stuff and we can keep that up for a bit longer.
Absolutely, yeah. And one of the things I noticed today, I'm looking at the cards here in front, and there's only one of these is a no age statement as well, which is awesome. And
I'm definitely not against them, and I don't actually necessarily even look at that when I pick the whiskies. As I said, it's sort of balancing what's the theme, what do I want to put in it, what brands are we buying from that month, so that we're not buying from 6, 7 different places because that's just a pain. And just try and make it really interesting and varied. So sometimes there'll be more NAS and sometimes there'll be like more age statement, and it just varies a lot in that regard, I would say. That's because there's no rhyme or reason to it. So that creates itself randomness.
I think that's pretty awesome though, because it's like you said. I mean, you kind of loosely putting these together. We had a really good one a couple of months ago that was the Scotch heavyweights, which was out of nowhere. I mean, this is mostly 43, 46%. And that one out of nowhere, not a single one of them was less than 50%. Obviously, you don't know what you're going to get before it turns up in the post, but I quite like that. I mean, even me, I mean, I probably could.
We're going to start putting out like a teaser email soon. Actually, the main reason for that, I was talking to you guys about this before we got started, but I don't think, like, I pride myself on how easy the business is to like cancel in theory and to change your subscription and to like do whatever you like, right? I'm not one of those people that requires you to phone me up 10 times to try and cancel. Like, it's not what I'm here to do. But like, I don't think that's front and center enough. I don't think we probably communicate to our customers quite enough. So I'm going to start doing a bit more about that just to try and like let people know when the order's coming up, so that if they want to cancel it because they forgot to, they can, or they can delay it, or they can let us know they moved, or whatever they want to do. And also just maybe tease people with the theme or what the contents will be. So we're doing a bit more of that soon. So some of that's sort of not by design, but I do quite like the idea of it being a surprise.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll just put a link for people to say, like, if you want to know what's in it, you can click, and if you don't, then you just have to trust us.
Yeah, I have to say, after 4 years of it, I completely do. New Jam Drinker saying, can you just confirm that Dram Team only deliver to UK at the moment? Correct. Only at the moment, but the possibility of further afield soon. And Cresemere is asking, are you drinking from a Norland glass? It's a blind Norland.
So we've started, part of the increased online effort we're going to be making with social is the blog, which is over, it's actually a slightly separate website, but it's the Dram Team blog.co.uk. So it's just got the extra word in it, blog, after Dram Team, as opposed to our actual website. And we just started to put content on there now, but we're looking at doing sort of a glassware piece. So I'm doing a bit of a glassware experiment today while I go. So I'm going to just hang on. I'm just going to get whiskey. So we've got some. I'll talk through this. So this is the Norland that we're starting out with, or as I think of it like a dragon egg glass. The cool thing about this is you can, like, the colouring on the inside. It's not very good lighting here, but it kind of lights up with the color of the liquid, which is quite cool. So yeah, drinking from a Northern to start with. Not my favorite, really overpriced. I like the black one because it is good for, you know, hiding the color if you want to do something properly blind. The swirling thing is cool. Like, it is cool. It does work, but I don't like the weight of it in the hand, and I just think for me, like whiskey, the traditional thing, a traditional glass is more my thing, and this is a bit too much like drinking out of futuristic space eggs. So,
Well, what does it do to the Glenrothes on the nose for you then?
I'm not getting a ton.
No.
It's quite gentle.
It's very gentle, and I mean, for me, it's like sometimes I'm a bit guilty of saying things like a classic Scotch sort of nose. Like, if you were ever going to have like a generic Scotchy nose, this is kind of on par with that. You know, that kind of like vanilla-y, honey, caramel.
It's very subtle, right? It probably, I mean, at 40%, it probably is. It's probably been chill filtered. Well, it has been chill filtered. That's almost certain. Or it'd be really cloudy. So I wouldn't expect it to blow your socks off, but it does fall quite short on the nose, but it is quite light and floral. The taste on the other hand is quite nice. I really quite enjoying that. It's like the light fragrancy that's not quite there enough on the nose. It's really coming through when you taste it.
Mm.
So obviously when I put these in order to drink, I'm sort of guessing because I haven't tried any of them. I'm just reading the notes and knowing what I know about the distillery and sort of seeing what works. But I think this is a good starter.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's like I always say as well. Like, I mean, just because it's not the most interesting whiskey in the world doesn't mean that it doesn't have its place in a tasting like this. A good starting dram. I'd be happy to have a bottle of this, which is I haven't been able to say for a Glenrothes for a while.
No, actually, I'm really impressed with that. It's like a light, fragrant whiskey. I think that's really, really nice. I can't remember how reasonable the price point is. Did you research that? I don't tend to put that. I probably should, but like, I think I'm guessing it's 35 to 40, but I'm not certain.
Yeah, more likely. I mean, you have a kind of like a bracket, don't you, for what you put as your 25 ml size?
Yeah, so it's quite varied. It goes from sort of as low as 20 or even slightly below sometimes, but we've equally gone as high as like 90. So it sort of averages around 50 RRP when it comes to like the first 5 drams, and then the 6th dram, as you know, is always something a little bit more expensive. I think today's is probably around 150 a bottle, the 6th dram.
We'll
so I'm doing some research while we're talking, and Master of Malt has this whiskey at, oh, what do you know? Okay, if you've really been sold and we've been tasting this, it's on special offer from $36.50 down to $29.95.
There you go.
So £6.51, everyone.
We there was the only time I've ever seen a convenient sort of placement like that was when I was doing the advent calendar last year. What Master of Malt did, they're very clever at their marketing, is that every day they know what's in it ahead of time because they place it so everyone's got the same behind the same number. It's not random. And every single day they had a deal on for that dram if it was available. So it's like you'd go, oh, that's nice. Check on Master of Malt. Yes, it's 20% off.
Yeah, well, actually, just as a little aside, I sort of see the ultimate future of the Dram Team. Like, you need to have a big enough audience. Obviously, Master of Malt has that, right? But like, I want to essentially. Have you ever been to a Blackrock whiskey bar? Has anyone heard of them and what they do?
I've heard of it. This is
So the main one was in London originally, and then there's now one in Bristol as well, where I live, and where the business is run from. And what they do is organise their whiskies. They're really trendy. So their one in London has like a huge oak table, like literally half an oak, and it has a channel running down the middle, and there's whiskey in the channel. So the idea is that the whiskey's aging in the oak. They can't call it whiskey because it would contravene a lot of Scotch whiskey regulations, but like they call it like the house spirit or something like that. But they're really, really interesting in how they set up the bar as an experience. And the one here in Bristol had a sort of tank inside a tree that was pre-mixed old fashioned, which was really cool. So if you get a chance, like in Bristol or in London, once we're all allowed to leave the house, go to Blackrock because they're very cool. But they organise, the most interesting thing about them for me is how they organise their whiskies. So they have cabinets, and they're just broad flavour categories like spicy, sweet, smoky, that sort of thing, and they don't overthink like which whiskey goes in which cabinet. They're like, yeah, this one's predominantly, the thing that stands out for me is smoke or sweetness or spice or honey or whatever, and they organize it like that, and then they have left to right flavor intensity, and they have like a dot pricing system for like the expense of the dram, and it's just a really cool, logical way to sort of organize a whiskey collection. I think ultimately I could see the Dram Team being a sort of curated whiskey library where people can more genuinely try before they buy, and we'll only ever put something into that whiskey library if we really rate it as a dram, and if we can offer really good value on the actual buying price, so it becomes more like, it offers more than it does at the moment. But like right now, it's more just about trying whiskey and exploring. But I think that for me is that in the future, when we have enough people to sustain that sort of model, that would be a really cool thing to do. So
absolutely. Just while you were telling us about that, then I opened up this can of Lark Fire water. I've just got this is water designed for whiskey. Not really something I'm into, but I added a few drops to this. I wouldn't normally do that with a 40%er because that, I mean, technically speaking, now isn't whiskey, is it? Because it's below 40%. But but it didn't do anything for it, I have to say. Yeah, glad to try it. But how ready do you think you are to move on to the next one?
Yeah, I've finished. I'm going half pause because it's if I have 6 in a row, I'm going to be
yeah, it's early. But right, so next up, then, we've got Douglas Laing. Actually, funny story. I got in trouble recently because I've been saying Lang my whole life because I used to work for a company that had a supplier that had this spelling, but said Lang. So I've always said it. But yeah, it's Laing, isn't it? Laing. Douglas Laing.
I've also been doing that. But you're a fellow, aren't you, Douglas?
Yes, I am. Thanks to you, to be fair, technically, because of all the reviews I did based on the stuff you sent me. And yeah, now actually, funny enough, I haven't heard from them really much this year. They've not been doing a lot, but
they've had quite a bit of change going in the background with distillery set up, with buying. I don't know if you know that they bought. What was the name? Not Eden Mill. They bought a young distillery, Strathern. They bought Strathern Distillery, which is primarily probably known for gin, to be honest. But has got very young whiskey just out. So they've not even building a distillery in Glasgow, but they've now just purchased a distillery. And they've had a bit of change. So there's probably something to that. I've spoken to them quite a lot recently, actually. So one bit of news for people who are customers. Actually, just interested to know who. I know we've got Whiskey Straight Al in the audience here, and he's a long-term Dram Team subscriber. So hello, Al, and thank you for joining us today. We've also got. Sad to say, former Dram Team subscriber Sarah in the comments. I heart whiskey. The reason she's a former subscriber is because hi Sarah, she's waving and smiling. Because she probably has a better back collection of Dram Team whiskey than even you've been. So bless her, she was a subscriber for a long time and then just wasn't getting around to drinking them. So at some point, sort of. Needed to take a break. So I don't know if you've managed to get through any of those, Sarah. Let us know how many you've got. Let us know what sort of damage you're doing at getting through your back catalogue, if any. You've now got a much better back catalogue of our own product than I do, because I don't have any of the old ones.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a struggle to get through them to start with, because you'd be surprised. Like, unless you drink them fairly regularly, you end up thinking, oh, I'll save that dram for a special occasion or something like that, and then that never comes. So yeah, for me, I tend to try and tuck into them as quick as possible. But those ones up there,
start doing unboxings, just get through them.
Just get through them, yeah.
Hi Al, I'm glad we're helping keep you sane.
And another one from Facebook as well. James, he's going to be enjoying with his pack later on, so hopefully enjoys that, if you know James.
Hi James.
But is a fairly new subscriber of mine, but seems to be enjoying the content. So thank you very much for joining, Bud. Ben Marnock as well. He's sitting out in his garden.
Ben Marnock, which isn't that an actual whiskey?
Yeah, it's an Aldi with Glenmarnock. Yeah,
I thought I was really confused. I was like, I swear that's one of the little Aldi names for a whiskey. Like, is it Glenmarnock?
Yeah. And there's a funny story behind that that is to be shared.
Well,
who else do we say hello to before we get into the next one? I think everyone I've said hello to. We said.
I think I should talk a little bit about the Glen collection, since should we start in on this one and talk about it? I'll just tell this little story. So like, there's a bit of a joke to there's 2 levels to the Glen collection. beyond the fact that obviously Glen is a really popular name for a whiskey, and actually that just makes my life really easy, because when I'm picking the box, I can just go, right, I've got all these ones I can pick from, and I can, you know, choose really easily, whereas some of the themes get a little bit harder to balance. But so first of all, like several times when I was first starting the business and I'd go to festivals and things, people would be sort of saying, you'd hear stories about what someone's favorite whiskey was, and quite often they'd start sort of, I tried this thing the other day, what was it? It was so good. Maybe you've heard of it, Glen. Glen something, and like it was just this thing where like so many times I heard that, or I had other people say that to me that they'd heard it. So that's sort of the inspiration. I originally wanted to call it the Glen something. So I was like, it's not really that professional. Like, we put it on the website, our subscribers might find it amusing, but like it needs to be something that when you put it on on for sale, that people make it sounds like something you'd want to own. And the Glen something, or the Glen Watsits or something like that doesn't really make sense. But that's one of the levels. And then the other is actually that one of my best friends, and now in fact as of a year and a half, my brother-in-law, his surname's Glen. His name's James Glen. So my sister is now a Glen. My niece is now a Glen. Well, she was always a Glen. This is her. Hang on. Let's see if we get. This is the youngest Glen. Tabitha Glen. And I think some of her family might be tuning in today, her grandparents and her uncle and aunt. So if Francis, Ian, Dot and Graham are on, hello, I hope you're well. And same to my sister and James as well. So that's sort of, for me, it's like a little bit of an inside joke that the Glen collection is sort of one part of my extended family, as well as just being a really easy way to pick a whiskey box. It's quite nice. So that's the story behind the box. Do you want to talk about the next whiskey a little bit, Vin?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I mean, obviously, a big fan of Douglas Laing over here. It's this is not one I've tried before, but one thing I will always say, I don't cover enough Glen Moray on the channel, but they are, in my opinion, one of the most underrated distilleries going, because they're selling really great stuff in the supermarkets for like 20 quid. Like, their standard classics range is so cheap.
I think I commented one of your videos to that effect, where I was like, by the time you do the maths on like VAT, the margin of the supermarket, the duty payment, like they've basically put that whiskey in that bottle for like 3 quid, and it's an absolute miracle that it doesn't taste awful. Like, and in fact, it tastes really good. So I'm a big fan of them. They are the only single malt in that price bracket of £20. It's really, it's as good as stuff 50% more expensive, most of it. And actually, then when you go up in their range to their sort of Elgin Heritage range, as opposed to their Elgin, I think it's Elgin Select or something, their entry level NAS, but their Elgin Heritage range is just beautiful. The 12-year-old's gorgeous.
Definitely. And this is obviously a Douglas Laing Provenance version. It'll be natural coloured. I imagine non-chill filters as well. They don't tend to do that sort of thing at Douglas Laing. Douglas Laing.
The branded glass. So
nice. I actually don't have any Douglas Laing.
We once, and they gave us some glasses generously to take home. It's a little bit worn out, as you can see. So this is the second in my lineup of glasses. I don't know what you'd call this one, a sort of coppeter, probably.
Yeah, coppeter, yeah.
A stubby coppeter, because you can get one more as well. So
I mean, for me, this is like it's quite like scotchy, but with the extra ABV, I'm getting a little bit more oakiness to it for sure.
Yeah, I think this one's got a ton more going on those. And now I'm obviously ruining the experiment because I'm using 6 different glasses. So like, it could just be that this glass is working better, because you can see this one's got a really narrow. What do you call it? Narrow entry. What do you call it? I've just forgotten how to refer to the top half of glass. But it narrows quite a lot. The aperture of the glass is quite narrow, official. So yeah, I'm getting a load of like, it's still really fresh, almost not new makey, but the same sort of like freshness and like hay and like lightly toasted cereal, I would say.
Yeah, definitely some kind of malty notes to it, without a doubt. If I didn't know better, I would say it was probably a little bit younger, but that doesn't tend to bother me these days, I have to admit, when it smells good and tastes good, and this definitely does.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, but I think it's what's interesting, and I think this is probably reasonably true of the Provenance range in general, is they don't muck around with it too much with the cask. There tends to be a lot less. It's a bit more of a fairly honest representation of the distillery style. Single cask might be varied from the distillery style because it's not been blended to suit, you know, what you might see in the supermarket or in the standard expressions. It might be more of an outlier in terms of flavour profile. But this one's quite atypical of a Glen Moray to me. I would have put this more like a lot Lomond, actually, an Inchmurrin, even possibly something like Penderyn-y about it. Not quite, but
it's definitely that kind of weirdness to it, that kind of funkiness.
Yeah.
I would not be able to place this as Glen Moray and a blind tasting without a doubt.
100% would not. I would have gone Inchmurrin or something like that.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, on the palate, it's I often say this, like there's some drams out there that taste different, smell and whatever. This is one of those ones that translates almost perfectly. For me, it's got a bit of extra spiciness, and
no, I really like that. That's really good as well. We're doing well so far.
Really well, yeah. And there's some spiciness on the back end, I think, as well.
So I can see that Greg's Whisky guy is asking for what are the highlight notes on this Glen Moray 12. So I'm going to read out the actual ones. By Douglas Laing standards, these are quite disappointing because some of them get super alliterative and poetic, because I think Fred and Cara write them themselves from the actual Laing family. But this one says, no, cedarwood and tobacco early with later vanilla and barley. I honestly don't know what cedarwood smells like, but if it's kind of fresh and resiny, then that's probably, to me, it's probably reasonably accurate. Not so much tobacco, but the vanilla and barley, definitely the barley for me. Palate, potent malt. I like that, potent malt, not just malt. More vanilla, custard style, and late citrus. I would say I get the cereal and the citrus quite strongly. I don't know so much about vanilla.
Yeah. I missed another question earlier as well. It said, can you ask Chris how long it took them to come up with their packaging and cards they include? They've been pretty much the same for the whole time so far, haven't they?
Yeah, so there's a weird part to any product like this, which is sort of product engineering, like product cost engineering, and like every decision you make about how you build the product, and it affects the cost, like postage and other things like that. So like, I always wanted to do the tasting cards, and I almost ditched them at one point because we were looking at doing like bespoke packs of cards, and they were super expensive. And I realized that we used to order business cards, and business cards are cheap as chips to order if you order enough of them. But the print quality is really decent, and you can change the thickness and the settings and things like that. So like, these are just business cards basically, but my little brother, who's currently over in Squamish near Vancouver in Canada for a couple of years, working and living out there. Hi Tim. He does the graphics. I take some of the photos for this set. We asked for the brands to provide the photos because we're now shipping. Before the whiskey would come into stock down here, I'd take bottles, take pictures, and then, you know, now they go directly to the bottlers. There's no intermediate storage here, so that's a bit more tricky in terms of prepping this. So yeah, we do these in house completely. And the box is actually a photo. So one of our co-founders is Greg Dillon, who does great drams. The photo on the box is actually his photo from a distillery somewhere. I do not know which one it is. I don't know if it even says on the cask, so it doesn't look like it. Anyway, even if they said what distillery was on the cask, it's probably a bourbon distillery. Yeah, we designed. My brother Tim did the graphics for the box as well, but I don't think it really took us too long to pull this together. I just gave him some insight. I'm not very good with the graphics and artwork, and he pulled it all together and made it look good, and we've kept it the same ever since. Really, because I think it works quite well, and I've never been dissatisfied with it. So yeah, it's been the same ever since you got your first box, I think.
Yeah, I would say exactly. I think the cards maybe changed a touch, but not much. I think, well, because at the start, I think you used to write your own blurb and your own tasting notes, but that's obviously quite an expansive.
Yeah, we needed to get together at that time. We were still doing, like, kind of have a Skype and write the tasting notes, and it was just really, it's hard to coordinate. It's really difficult to come up with tasting notes all the time. And what we realized, we're not really adding much value to like what's already given. So we put the producer ones on. You can see here we've got a little blurb, a factoid at the top, and then the actual producer notes. Can't really get my camera to behave well enough to zoom on it, but So we thought, well, what's the point in duplicating? So instead, we sort of moved to this factoid and just put a little bit of an educational point about the brand, the distillery, the expression on there. Because part of, I think, what everyone's enjoyment of whiskey is they learn more about it. Is literally learning more about it, and kind of it's really, when you start out, like I started from nothing, starting the Dram Team in terms of knowledge, really. And I really enjoyed acquiring little bits of knowledge and factoids, and that can go on endlessly, right? There's an infinite amount of stuff you can learn about whiskey if you really want to get into it. You probably need a degree in biochemistry, but if you want to learn it.
David's asking you, are most distilleries and companies forthcoming when it comes to getting to distribute their whiskies, or are some a hassle?
That's a really insightful question, because the answer is definitely some are a hassle. So like we always position it, we buy the whiskey first of all, so like we don't seek free whiskey, except on rare exceptions where we can't meet the budget, and we'll say, well, look, we can include the whiskey that this whiskey if you just help us out with a few extra bottles, because otherwise it's too much expenditure. And to be fair, I'm always thinking about how, while keeping the budget fixed, how much great whiskey can I put in the box, because I just think that's win-win. So if from time to time it makes sense to sort of seek a little bit of extra support. Oh, I can see Greg Dillon's popped into the chat. Greg, we were just talking about you. No.
All good things. All good things.
Oh, photo in the box. That was it. I was like, I'm just sort of talking about Greg. Greg, maybe you can tell us which distillery you took that photo at. As one of the co-founders, and he writes over on greatdrams.com, and he's recently, I say recently, it's probably been like 2 years, he's been doing his own single cask bottlings, which are fantastic. He really cares about the liquid that he's putting into those. He's had some amazing, like there was a Glentauchers sherry cask, which was phenomenal. And I know he ended up perhaps regretting how much he spent on the sherry cask, which was a really good one. But also like a young grain that was 10 years old, but just phenomenally buttery and that sort of thing. So yeah, check out Greg's Great Drams single cask bottlings and things. They're really, really worthwhile. We'll try and get some more in the box at some point. We should have obviously got some of the Glens into the Glen collection, but I know that he's been having a few problems with supply recently, getting his stuff out of the bottlers. So.
Yeah, I've tried quite a few of Greg's whiskies now. I did one of his tastings on Facebook, which was awesome. But a few of them have come my way via you as well, which is awesome. Yeah, really good stuff. Really good stuff.
Yeah, I think we probably had 3 or 4 in at this point. Maybe 4, because originally Greg's first experiment was actually pertinently a Provenance bottling in collaboration with Douglas Laing of Ardmore. Which was, I think, Greg's either the first distillery he visited or his first bottle. I can't remember which way around. He can correct us if he's still listening. I didn't really finish answering David's question there about distilleries and companies forthcoming. So some of them are flat out no. So like just a matter of policy because of who they are. Like so, Glenmorangie Ardbeg, just not even worth asking. Like no one repackages their stuff. Others are just a kind of no for now. Sometimes like Brooklavy were like really into the idea but couldn't get permission from the powers that be. Chivas Regal, as in Pernod Ricard, just have a policy of no one does it. Others are sort of more cautious. We get a lot of questions about how we bottle it, but because we're very legit in how we do everything, like we don't tend to have problems with that. Like sometimes it's just a matter of the fact that we're repackaging it. We don't try to hide what we're putting in it. We could have done that from the start. We could have made it anonymous. We could have just rebottled other people's stuff, but that wasn't the point. The point was to help people understand what they were trying and to learn about it. So we didn't do any of that. But yeah, some brands are just easier to work. Some are really supportive. Some will give us better pricing access, meaning we can put better stuff in the box without spending more. Some do occasionally lend stock support. And some of them just make it easier by virtue of what their range is. So like Douglas Laing is like our most featured brand. One, I think they honestly think they're great. Like I'm really a big fan of them. And so I don't apologize for putting them in the box more than anyone else, but also like, they have such a great range from their remarkable regional malts through to their like this Provenance, like really affordable single cask that you can really learn about what a single cask is like. Admittedly at bottling strength of 43 or 46. It's 46, I think, most of their Provenance. So it's still non-chill and all that, but it's entry-level pricing and it's really reasonable pricing and it's a good way to explore single cask without breaking the bank. And then they're all particular as like a step up. And actually the Glengoyne 14 is probably one of the younger ones, but you can get some actually banging like single malts and grains in there. Old Particular, and then one thing we've never been able to afford is extra Old Particular, which is sort of like several £100 a bottle and things like that. And then they've got various offshoot brands and things like that. Like they just have so much variety that it means if you've got a gap in your lineup and you want to fill it with an interesting whiskey, they make it super easy to buy, and they're nice to work with as well. So there's a big variety in how the brands are, but most of them, we have permission from some pretty big names like William and Grant and Sons, what was Maxim, which is kind of Beam Suntory, Maxim now, like, who gave us permission just because they saw it as a no-brainer. These guys are going to buy the whiskey and they're going to promote it to people. So we've done pretty well with that, and I think we want to continue with it and continue getting really interesting brands on board and just keeping the variety up between indies and between big brands and between upcoming and kind of longer-standing world whiskey brands.
Absolutely. Well, talking of big brands, nice accidental segue there. We should move on to the Glenfarclas. Because this is, I was talking to somebody privately recently about Glenfarclas. I've always been a bit hit or miss with them, but I've never tried this 18-year-old. Let me flick over the banner for anyone watching.
That's a really interesting comment, because actually, like, I know a lot of people are ardent Glenfarclas people. I am too, but actually, if you look at their core range, like some of it, I definitely am. More their single cask stuff and their like special stuff is more like really in my wheelhouse of like preference. And I think the Glenfarclas 105 probably is one of my all-time favorite sherry cask whiskies.
Yeah, I have to say the 105 really is up there for me as well. Yeah, absolutely love that. And it became when people were asking me to recommend them like a sherried whiskey, I used to say the Abelard Abnar as the kind of go-to best value sherry bomb, and then when that went up in price, it was absolutely no-brainer to recommend the 105 after that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because I think the Abelard was like really special at that price point. But I think the 105 is still there and often like on offer, and they actually do a litre bottle as well, which tends to kind of often hover only a few quid above the 70 CL, so that's worth looking out for. I think the 18 is quite an interesting one, because I haven't tried this one before either. It's a travel retail exclusive, I think, or maybe like a foreign markets or something. But again, it comes in a litre bottle. You can see on the card it's a bit disproportionately fat for a normal Glenfarclas. So the core range goes like 10. There's a 12, which is a foreign markets thing or a travel exclusive. I think it's 10. So in the UK, it's 10, 15, 17, which is unusual. And then it jumps to 21, 25. The 25 is absolutely amazing and can be got on Amazon sometimes as little as 85, which is ludicrous. So they're a big name brand, but actually still family owned, like 6th generation Grant family. The family is still involved in running the distillery, and they operate really independently. So yeah, really super like iconic distillery, but still very run like an independent family owned business, which is cool.
And I can say right off the bat here, I mean, I tend to when I'm tasting whiskey, you might have noticed if you were watching me while Chris was talking there, I tend to have a sniff and then have a drink straight away. I don't tend to like go critically assessing the nose until after I've had a taste. But I can tell you straight away that this is absolutely fantastic. Love it.
Yeah, this smells great to me. Now, a customer messaged me. He was just asking me a question about something, and he said that this one's a bit of a miss for him, which he was surprised about. So I was curious to try it after that. But like that is one of the things that I love about the box, is it reveals that like just because I don't like something, often when I don't like something, someone writes to me saying like, I absolutely loved this, because the more extreme something is, like the more it's likely to be in someone's niche and not in someone else's. So like there's kind of crowd pleasers and there's things that split the room. And I think some of those are the most interesting.
Definitely.
It smells amazing. Like, the nose on this is, you know, you drink straight away, but like the nose on that is very, very good.
Superb. While we're enjoying that, Bud's asking how you navigate the complexity of shipping to different locations and their various regulations. We touched on that a little bit earlier, didn't we? But
doing it is the answer.
yeah. But at the moment, basically, Bud, Chris and the Dram Team are UK only, but they're looking at like Europe. But the navigating it is almost easier just to not bother and let people in their own territories deal with their own stuff. So
first of all, anywhere in North America, like the States or Canada, it's just it's not even worth it. The bottle size isn't allowed in the US, and in Canada, it's basically state regulated. And good luck trying to get your product into the country, yet alone at any sort of affordable price point for the customer. So that's the main barrier with everything. Is like of our £30 price, like £6 of that is shipping. So like 20%, and then there's VAT. So like actually like 20% is VAT. So like by the time you take the VAT off and you're £25, and then you take £6 out for shipping, and like, so actually like you're left at 19 quid of the 30, of the 30 actually margin and product cost. So 11 quid is just shipping and taxes on our product price, which is, and that in the UK is like relatively low compared to other countries, and that doesn't even take into account the sort of duty on the alcohol and stuff. But we don't pay that; we buy everything duty paid. But mainly, the reason we haven't shipped abroad before is just because it's prohibitively expensive. And like a few months ago, I was looking at having to use UPS for Europe, and it was like 20 quid a shipment.
Yeah.
So I've had to do something like send 3 at once and do it quarterly, but that sort of breaks the model a bit and doesn't really work. So we have done really well with DPD now to get some really competitive rates into Europe. So that's really exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, it's for me, it's not like a huge like sherry note, but it's clearly sherry. You would pick this out on a blind lineup sherry, I think. But it's not like in your face either. It's all like very subtle and very gentle.
Yeah, it's got a lot to give. I really like this. Like I think, yeah, it sort of like just I would say an enhanced version of their 10, like a significantly enhanced version of their 10. So I find the 15 sometimes a bit savoury, maybe. Like I've struggled with that if I've had it after a sweet whiskey, and I find maybe it's not got as much sweetness as I like in a sherry dram.
Definitely. I didn't like the 15. The one as I forget what it's called now. It's like the 119 pence family reserve. I don't know if you've seen that one. It's like it was a limited release, but it was pretty awful. Highly sulfured to me, but luckily it disappeared pretty quickly, so I don't have to worry about it.
I think some of the most amazing Glenfarclas I've had are probably some of the family cask stuff, the stuff at the distillery, and like some of the special editions they've done for people and the single casks. Some of those are absolutely incredible. But I really like this. I would say like of the ones less than the 25, this is my favorite because I can't remember the 17 off the top of my head. I don't know how much I've drank it, but
no, I haven't tried that one. Ben Marnock's asking, how easy was it to get permission from Glenfarclas to include this in the box?
Yeah, that one was a bit surprising because they're really quite careful, as are Kilchoman actually. And the reason I mentioned Kilchoman in the same breath as Glenfarclas is that their distributors in the UK are Poloroger or Poloroger, parce que that's about champagne. So, but like, isn't the champagne brand Poloroger or Poloroger? If there's anyone who speaks French, please excuse me. Distribute for them in the UK. So we originally made that brand introduction via someone at Paul Roger, who was really supportive and friendly and saw the benefit. And so just approached and said, look, this is a small business looking to kind of bottle up your stuff and they'll buy it. And we got permission through them. So that I've been really grateful for that because Kilchoman and Glenfarclas generally don't allow that. So I sort of, there was one where I really, they're just two really great family-owned distilleries. One who's sort of stolen ideas from the other. Like I believe that there was a little bit of subterfuge from Kilchoman's owner as into how he found out where Glenfarclas sourced their sherry casks from and sort of stole a few tricks from them in that regard. So those two are two of the ones I'm prouder to have landed, to be honest, because they're really great brands. We should put more Kilchoman in. They don't necessarily release a lot. The part of the problem with that is like the buying channel. So we don't buy directly, so it ends up being more expensive.
Yeah.
We're kind of then subject to where we can get it at a decent value through other channels like trade chat, normal trade avenues. So that's an important thing, is like, because if we buy directly from a brand, we tend to get 25% off. Whereas if we buy from Master of Malt or Whisky Exchange or other trade providers, then we're looking at 10%, and it just limits what you can do with the lineup. So Greg's being very kind to me. C'est un peu difficile pour moi en français, Greg. I'm working with a lot of French people right now in my other career, and I keep wanting to try and speak French, and I realize that once I've got past the first few sentences, I'm absolutely hopelessly lost. But
I can I spend a lot of time in France because my parents have got a place in the south of France, so I get to go on holiday there for relatively nothing. I am pretty good at reading French now, but I'm not confident enough to keep trying, so I have to. I can talk to people at the supermarket, check out, and like the transactional. I'm good at transactional French.
Yeah.
So I can order and tell people what I want. But as soon as someone starts asking me how I am, I'm like,
yeah, I'm lost. It's the same thing. I can read it pretty well, and I can put sentences together to some extent. But the minute someone speaks, I'm completely lost, which is disappointing. So one day I'll learn. One day I'll learn properly.
Well,
I think, unless I'm mistaken, is Greg French or is he French Canadian?
Greg is French. I'm not sure if he's of different origin, but he's a Parisian, I believe.
Ah, okay. I think there's probably another Greg on Twitter or somewhere that's Canadian. So I was going to mention that just because I'm wedging an extra piece of whiskey glassware in. I'm drinking water out of, which is the Canadian Glencairn. So, and actually, my other half, my girlfriend Sarah, is Canadian. So, Canadian Glencairn, really good for really strong, short, old fashions and other whiskey cocktails.
What do you think of the palate on this one then? Before I add some water, personally, I'm. What was that again? Sorry.
Are you on to number 4?
No, not yet. We didn't talk about the actual palate on Glenfarclas yet. Technically, we just said it was good.
Yeah, okay. So I think for me, like from what I remember as a 10-year-old, it's like a sort of meatier version of that. And by meatier, I don't mean literally it's meatier. I mean it's like more robust. It's got a bit more body than the 10-year-old, which is relatively not subtle but light. This is quite powerful. Like I think we're only at 43. I would have probably guessed higher if I'd have had to guess because the sherry flavors are quite powerful. So yeah, I like that. I would recommend that. I think I bought that because it was on a very good deal on Amazon for a litre. So if you hop on Amazon and have a look, you might get lucky with a litre of 18-year-old Glenfarclas. But to me, that's reasonably representative of what I think of as Glenfarclas, and it's very tasty.
Adding water didn't do anything to it for me.
I didn't have enough left.
It ruined the back end for me.
Yeah, I think at 43, like maybe literally a drop or two just to open it up, or whatever the magical chemistry is that happens when you put 1 or 2 drops in with esters. But like for me, it doesn't need much, if anything.
Yeah, definitely. But I have to say, this is to me. This is going to sound really corny because obviously we've got you on and I do this with you. But this is the beauty of getting a set like this. Is because I. Living with a prejudice of Glenfarclas from a long time ago, where I tried a few and didn't like them, would automatically make me not buy that brand anymore. But through this tasting set, you've almost forced me to try the 18-year-old, and thankfully, I've actually really enjoyed that. That's my favourite of this so far.
I think that's a really interesting comment because I think I certainly have this idea, right, that like of the vertical range or just the range of a distillery is always going to be representative of a certain style. But actually, there's enough. That's not how distilleries necessarily think about the product that they put out. So they're not like, right, well, the 15-year-old is just going to be a more refined version of the 10-year-old. And the 17-year-old is just going to be like, it's not like, that's not how it works. It's like, oh, this is just a better version of the younger one. Like, so I think probably Glenfarclas is a reasonable, like, example of that. So this is probably little known, but like the reason that they use sherry cask is because their whiskey tastes crap if you put it in a bourbon cask. Like literally, George Grant said that to me. I once interviewed him on behalf of Greg. Greg was writing some piece and wasn't free to talk to George Grant at the one slot he'd given us for this interview, or given Greg for the interview. So I was like, well, I'll phone George Grant. And I was there on the phone, like really nervous, talking to actual George Grant, who honestly just couldn't be less interested in talking to me. I'm sure he's a lovely man, but you know what it's like if you're in that sort of position, people want to talk to you all the time, journalists, and you're like on the phone to this guy who doesn't know what he's doing because he's me and not an actual journalist. And but the really interesting takeaway from that was, and he got quite animated when he was talking about it, was just that like people think it's sort of like a choice, a style choice, a preference on their part, or a statement to go like with sherry cask. It's because they experimented with different casks and sherry cask suited their style of spirit. They apparently quite oily, whatever that means, like oily and you make quite heavy. And they said like if they put it in bourbon, it just doesn't taste good. So like it's kind of this assumption that they do it because they want to. They do it because it suits how they make their spirit, which is really interesting because I certainly wasn't like conceiving of that choice in that way. And if you've ever had anything from them in another cask, like it doesn't stand up as well as the sherry. Like they've done port ones and things like that. It's just not quite as nice.
I'd like to try it. I guess good time to ask. I think I missed this question earlier, so sorry about that if somebody else asked it. says, is there a brand that you would like to get in the future that you haven't been able to land yet?
Yeah, I saw that. I like that question a lot. Do you know what the obvious one is? And I'm kind of always loath to say it. So we have a corking record with Indies. Like they like working with us. They do really interesting whiskey. Like people haven't heard of them. I think if you're getting into whiskey and you discover about independent bottlings, it's like this is amazing. Like they're good value. They do really interesting stuff. They're a bit, in some ways, a bit of a tease because they're ephemeral. Like they're there and then they're gone and then the bottling's finished and that's it. But that's something like that's interesting, kind of enjoyable in its own right. That you've had something that you'll literally never be able to get again unless you can buy up what's left of it, right, and keep enough around. But like, so we have a lot of success with Indies because they're just more small and they're more easy to access the right person to get permission to say yes. Like Diageo is the answer. Like they just have so much whiskey. Like they have so much. They have good distilleries. Yes, they're a big evil corporation or whatever, but actually, like they have a long storied history in the industry through their various iterations of businesses. But to me, it's just about putting good whiskey in the box and like access to Diageo. And if we had a decent buying channel for it as well, so we get a good price. Like they just do interesting stuff. Like they have good distilleries. They have a good variety. So that would really be great, and that's the same reason I was disappointed that we couldn't get Pernod Ricard on board, because I'm not a biggest fan of all their whiskies, but they have quite a big repertoire. So when you get someone on board like that, it just makes it really interesting for your customers.
Absolutely.
But I'm still hoping to crack that. I think Diageo are one of those people that stop. They're not kind of litigious. I think Master of Malt do samples of their stuff. Maybe the Whiskey Exchange. So like, probably we could just do it without asking and we wouldn't get in trouble. Someone from them said just do it and don't put the name on the bottle, but again, like don't want to do that. So I'd like to crack that Diageo nut one day, just to have that access to that portfolio, because I think it's really interesting. So that's probably the answer. I can't think of anything else that immediately sort of jumps to mind where they said no. I guess Brookladdy sort of said no, and I really like Brookladdy and I'd love to have them on board, but there's so much great whiskey out there that not having one or two like that isn't really prohibitive. And actually with the likes of Douglas Laing and other Indies, if we really want to put a distillery in, we can normally find a way to put the distillery in without going to the original producer. And in fact, I quite like doing that because it kind of gives me a sense of self-satisfaction of having like, oh, you won't let us bottle your whiskey, then we're going to buy some from someone else and put it in. Which is just, I suppose, human nature. I don't really feel too jilted by any of the brands or anything because they're normally fairly reasonable about it. So yeah, I think the answer to that question is Diageo for me, which may surprise people, but it's just like the distilleries they own have a fantastic history, and they're really interesting ones, and not just the big names, but like the ones that go into their blends and stuff like that. We've had quite a few of those, and some of those are really worthwhile.
It's funny you mentioned Diageo as well, because I got two pickups this week. I didn't really show them, but I'll show them now. I picked up two of the Game of Thrones whiskies.
They're absolutely budget right now. They're really worthwhile picking up.
Yeah, definitely. And so I've got here the Clynelish Reserve and and they were both £33 delivered. And the Clynelish is I don't know about the age statement on it. There's no age statement, but it's a Clynelish for 51.2% for 33.
Clynelish is one of my favorite. It's a super fruity whiskey. I think if I'm remembering this right, that Compass Box use a lot of Clynelish in their blends. I might have got it mixed up with one of the distillery, but there's something like that I think that's in a lot of Compass Box because it gives a really fruity, like sweet base sort of blends. I've seen a question there. I don't mind me picking questions out. I'm not keeping up with them at all. But David asked how different the 18-year-old Glenfarclas was to the 17. I can't answer that. I can't remember what the 17's like stylistically. That's very clever. I like this one.
Yeah, I missed it because David didn't tag me in it, but it's there is. And we were just saying actually, weren't we, that neither of us have tried the 17, or I certainly haven't. But whether it's worth it or not, it's hard to say. I couldn't tell you either way on that one, unfortunately.
I would say look on Amazon, see how much the 18 is, because that was a litre as well, and I think it was very reasonable. I'm now doing this, so excuse me if I go quiet for a second.
No, carry on. It's a good opportunity to move on to the next one, I think, which is another Douglas Laing. But this time we've got an Old Particular, which I don't. Do they water that down? Old Particular? Sometimes they do. I can never.
Not declared. I would say yes, but not to the same bottling that they.
But what we're getting here is a Glengoyne natural coloured, non-chill filtered at 48.4%, 14-year-old. I'm not sure about the price on these, but the old particulars are a little bit more, roughly 45 to 55 pounds usually, especially lower.
There's probably a broader range because they do. You'll get stuff like an Ardmore 21-year-old that will be in the old particular range. We've had quite a few of them. Okay, I was completely wrong, and I did not buy Glenfarclas 18-year-old on Amazon, but it is available. Oh no, there it is on Amazon UK. It was hiding when I searched on their actual. I can't remember where I bought it now. Currently unavailable. Probably because I bought it.
Bits of it, yeah.
No, so it is. If you Google it, you'll find it, and it looks like you can get it for kind of 60 quid or something, which is pretty good for an 18-year-old whiskey. Bear in mind that most brands' 18-year-old whiskies in the 80 to 90 pound bracket, and it's a litre, so really you're talking nearly half price of what you would for some 18-year-olds.
That's a bit of a bargain, isn't it? A bit of a bargain. All right, do you have the next one in front of you?
I will do very quickly. Can I just need to do my little glassware review before we move on. So this is a cool one. I don't know if anyone's talking about Cadenheads. There's someone actually. Okay, new answer. I'd really like to get some Cadenhead stuff into the pack, and I probably could do it. I just need to sort of nag enough people to like get them to reply to my email and say yes, or phone someone. So Cadenheads is an independent bottler that they have shops all over the world. So I think they have like one in Berlin and most of the European countries. But in the UK, I don't know if they're in London, but they're in Campbelltown, and they have a warehouse that's just kind of associated with Springbank and J&A Mitchell, who owns Springbank, and they have some absolutely amazing whiskies. So if you go, I thoroughly recommend if you make it to Campbelltown, and Campbelltown would be probably my first recommendation for a whiskey trip. Glen Scotia, fittingly for this box. One of my favourite distilleries and absolutely standout people. Like, love the team there. They're owned by Loch Lomond Group, who own Loch Lomond Distillery, no surprise. But Gary has been really supportive. They're in our first ever box. Gary Mills is one of their brand people, and has always supported us, and that's really nice. We're doing some really exciting stuff together at the moment that I can't talk about any further than that. But Glen Scotia is just one of my favourite distilleries, and Ian McAllister, who's the distillery manager and actually sort of basically the head distiller there. I'm never really quite certain what he does. He's a bit coy about it, a bit humble, but he's one of probably the nicest man and most delightful company that I've met in the whiskey industry, and that, as you know, is saying a lot. So like Glen Scotia hit it up. Springbank, iconic distillery, does Springbank, Longrow, and Hazelburn, three really different and interesting whiskies from one amazing distillery. And Kilkerran, which is probably one of my favourite. Kilkerran 12-year-old, probably up there, top 3 12-year-old whiskies.
Definitely.
And that's a sister company a sister distillery to Springbank. And then Cadenhead is sort of somewhere between the two, like at the warehouse. And like, I don't know, I don't think the ownership's the same, but this is the glass you get or used to get when they do their tastings. I think they've switched to a different style of glass, which I'll show you later. But I love this one. It's quite heavy at the bottom, nice and little, so it makes the dram look a little bit more significant if you're trying to not drink too much during lockdown, for example. And it's just really nice for warming in the hand, which when we went there was super important because the warehouse was actually freaking freezing. So you're drinking this straight from the cask whiskey with like the copper dog and things, and they just like literally put the tube in and just let it into your glass. It's super cool. You get through 6 to 8 cask strength drams, and you go in sober and you leave absolutely flat out wasted, like everyone in the group. But the whiskey's freezing, so you're there kind of breathing on it, trying to like get it like this. We went in October, but absolutely recommend that as sort of the first whiskey trip you should do. So this is one of my favourite glasses from that trip that I did with my friends here from Bristol. One of them, they have a blog actually, Real Dram Rob, and Tom, who you probably know, then Real Dram Tom, I think he probably is, and then James Glen. Eponymous James Glen of the Glen collection. So we had an amazing trip up to Campbelltown, and that was one of the highlights. So one of my favourite glasses, great story behind it. Recommend it if you can get hold of one, but I think they've retired it. Right, what are we on to, Ben?
We're on to the Douglas Laing Glengoyne, which I've had a little bit of a sniff of this, and it's exceptional. Yeah, absolutely exceptional. It's
I'm a big fan of Glengoyne. I believe you are too. You've been there. Was it Glengoyne you visited? You did a little feature on the channel at some point.
yeah. I mean, like it's one of the things I don't tend to broadcast it much, but I'm drastically understudied when it comes to actually visiting distilleries. I don't get up to Scotland much. When I do, I try to go to a couple. Before I started the channel, I spent a lot of time in Fife, but I was into whiskey, but not to the point where I would go check out anything local. To my detriment, really. But yeah, I did go to Glengoyne last year in February. I think it was last year. It might have been the year before. I'm losing track. But it really opened my eyes. I mean, I really enjoy new distilleries because I'm a big appreciation of engineering and. But
I've just got my keyboard, so I'm just grabbing some.
Yeah, carry on. The way they do things at Glengoyne is so traditional. My favourite example is that they're still measuring the levels in the tanks with bits of wood and rope and buoyancies, which is really fascinating to me. But it just means that what they're making is so human that like they have to have someone there who can't just like press a button. Yes, this recipe works. They have to be standing in front of the still and they have to smell it and taste it and know specifically the point when they need to switch it over.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you start visiting. So I haven't visited a lot either, to be fair. Like I visited my first ever one was Cotswolds with a friend from London who I used to work with, a guy called Mert, who suggested that he was just getting into whiskey. And he's like, "Oh, let's go do it." And I was like, that was when I was literally started the idea about the Dram Team. I hadn't even started. And that was my first ever one. And at the time it was really small and it didn't have whiskey out yet or anything. But yeah, I can't even remember what the second was, but basically with Rob and Tom and my friend Chris, who's actually a photographer and not a drinker, like we went to Speyside, which would be probably my other recommendation. Hit Speyside, hit Campbelltown. Obviously, if you like smoky whiskey, hit Islay. I've not actually been to Islay yet, but those would be my starting points. You quickly realise that they're worlds apart, because the end product seems like you think of it as just one thing, and therefore you kind of assume that like the production method, obviously there's huge, the similarities are really strong, but how that method is applied or executed in different distilleries is just a world apart. Like Springbank is much more like what you're describing, like it's all manual, like very traditional and labor intensive. Glen Moray, cracking whiskey, like it's almost like one of the, like a submarine control room or something, just like LED panels everywhere, like network diagrams and computers, all kind of controlled by it's controlled by people, and they're looking at readings and they're making decisions, but there's no manual intervention in the process. It's all remotely controlled and systemized, but it doesn't affect the end product really. I think there's many different ways to get to that same end, but it will of course inevitably result in more like batch variability or something like that.
Yeah, and I'm all for that. I mean, I went to Waterford Distillery last year as well, and they can run that whole plant with 1 or 2 people because it's an ex-Guinness brewery and it's really high tech. Everything is automated, and a lot of people say that might take away the human element to it. And to a certain extent, you're right. You don't have to have someone who's 20 years experience to run down there and flick the switch on the still, but that recipe has still been designed by industry heavies and is producing excellent whiskey. That's the important part at the end. I mean, if there's 2 kinds of whiskey, it really isn't there. There's good tasting whiskey, and these aren't mutually exclusive either. They can be both. But whiskey that's got a story and whiskey that's just whiskey because it's whiskey. And you can be into both. There's times for both of those things. Like we're talking about Glengoyne now. It's got a story. It's got history. It's fabulous. Waterford, less of a story. Still has a story technically, more politics than long-standing history. But it's still excellent whiskey, or will be when it finally comes out. It should be fairly soon, to be fair. But
I think it's within the next couple of months.
Definitely. Before we get onto the nose and tasting of this, then new Dram drinkers asking, would there ever be a Dram Team festival, or how might that happen?
Straight no. So like little known fact, Anthony will know Amy from Birmingham Whisky Club. He's one of the first friends and dearest friends first friends I ever made in the whisky industry, and a dear friend still. So like I met Amy when I was at the Whisky Exchange show in October, just after we launched in the August of 2016. We got chatting to her. I think the Michter's stand, me and James Glen of the Glen collection fame, were there trying to sign brands up, like talking to them about what we were doing and saying, like, would you like to be involved? We're at the Michter's stand speaking to them, who are an American bourbon and other American whiskey brand that are owned by Specialty Brands, who are a sister company to the Whisky Exchange. And we basically drank the whole range of Michter's whiskies, 4 or 5, while talking to Amy. And then we've stayed in contact ever since. So she runs the Birmingham Whisky Club, which you should check out if you're in the area of the Midlands. Like, she has a bar now, which is epic, like probably the only bar like it within us. I don't know, like 150-mile radius or something, I'd guess. Nothing else like it in Birmingham, I don't think. So that's in the jewelry quarter there. So like she runs festival. Like she does a really great festival up in Birmingham. It's just a bit of a step above some of the other festivals. It's like less templated. It's got more like local food there. Like the brands are more varied. And I think like the actual venue itself, you've probably been to it, Vin, I'm guessing. You helped me on a stand there once, did you? Was that festival, or was that down here? That was down here.
I was down there, yeah. I helped you there, but I try to go to the Birmingham one every year. I almost didn't go this year, but I was asked to help out a little bit there as well. So I kind of
it's a crack. I think one of the best things is the master classes. Like they do cigar and whiskey, chocolate and whiskey, and like all sorts of really cool stuff. But we actually collaborated to put a festival on here in Bristol 3 years ago, a real life festival. I don't know if that question was like real life or like virtual. But it's so much work, and it was so much work to be involved in it. It wasn't really my cup of tea, and like events weren't my thing. And it didn't really fit with what the Dram Team did, because peddling whiskey miniatures at a whiskey festival is sort of like Coles to Newcastle. Everyone's got free whiskey. Like they don't want to buy whiskey miniatures and things. Like people got the concept and they enjoyed tasting the whiskies that we had on the stand from our various brand partners, but that didn't really work for us. So it's not something I do in person, I reckon. I'd certainly facilitate online ones for sure. We've been doing some really interesting stuff lately with like partners on virtual whiskey tastings. So primarily Felipe Schreberg, who writes about whiskey for Forbes magazine. He has an online, a real life tasting business. And when he had to shut down because of COVID, he got in contact, and we've been partnering with him on doing virtual whiskey masterclasses. So we provide the boxes, and he hosts tastings on Zoom, which have been really cool. So like, it would be like this only if everyone involved had a whiskey set with them and was on screen as well. So those have been really cool, and it's like a really kind of next level of what our product is meant for, which is to be a whiskey tasting in a box. So like we send it to people and they taste it, but that really kind of completes the raison d'etre. That's some more French view, but like the purpose of the box is to be a whiskey tasting in a box, and therefore like having someone then host that on the next bit is really cool. So I think I saw someone comment like, oh, if we had a bit more advance notice, we'd join in. So like we'll definitely try and do that in future. Like just as a company, we'll try and be doing more of that and trying to get more interactive. We're looking at things we can do, like maybe have a Facebook group for people who buy the box and things like that, and just start getting a bit more of a whiskey club feeling around what we do. Because I've always sort of wanted to do it. It's just a matter of time pressure and priorities and keeping the business on a level and not having time to do that. But I think those are the sort of things I'm interested in doing. So yeah, I think with the festival, I think probably we're going to be supporting the festivals in the future for sure. Like we already are to some extent. To a small extent, we do the SMWS's miniature sets. They've done some virtual tastings and sort of festival celebrations, but obviously they're relatively small. We're actually helping out a couple of people who'll be working with Dan at Somerton Club for the Somerton Festival, which is going to be absolutely awesome. We talked about that a little bit at the start, but we're just helping a couple of brands out with miniature provision who don't have the ability to sort of get those prepared. I won't do any spoiler alerts about who those are, but I'm interested to try both of them myself for sure. And one of them's particularly special. So I don't think we'll do our own, but like we're always going to end up being involved in that sort of stuff. And I think it's probably going to become much more trendy after this period of time when people have had to sort of quickly learn how things like what we're doing now, and you're sort of ahead of the game, Vin, because you've been doing it for like 3-4 years, how things like this can be made really interesting for the people who are the observers and actually then become participants as opposed to just watching with me. And I'm really grateful for this wonderful. I'm pointing at this part. I'm pointing at this comment section. So I'm really grateful for everyone who's doing this. I think it's really cool that everyone takes the time to do that. I wish you could all have the drams with us and kind of be on the screen as well, so that we could actually chat to you. Because to me, that's what the essence of being into whiskey is about and what the industry is about. So I'd love to do facilitate some more stuff like that in the future, and certainly probably not do our own festival, but certainly start doing more of that interactive stuff with our own customers.
Yeah, well, we did going back to that McMira tasting that we did with my local thing. We did it all. It was on McMira's channel, but obviously with the infrastructure I have, I could have facilitated it if needs be. But we did it. That was live out to the world. But afterwards, because obviously McMira reps and the guys who were running that stream in the background, they had a guy pressing the buttons. They're all on the clock. They're being paid for that. So we said that the whiskey club that we're in were asked to spend money on that set. And they wanted to give us 45 minutes of time. So I said, well, let's get like an after party together. And I did something very similar to this, but it was all off air, all unlisted. So you had to have the link to be involved. And it got people from the community to come onto camera. We can have up to 6 people in this format now. And it was really good. Like people were just like, yeah, all right, let's jump on, because they knew they didn't have that kind of like foreverness of YouTube. And they can still go back and watch it if they want. They've got the link, but it's the infrastructure is there, and there's people like me, new jam drinker, that all know what they're doing with it, and we can help with all different things. I mean, I'd be more than happy to do things for free. Pretty much, this is a hobby of mine, so it's always great to hear from people when they want to do things like that. But this kind of situation that we're in now has forced a lot of people that didn't think this was all possible to really know that it is possible.
Yeah, and it reveals weaknesses in brands' abilities. Like some of them are so much better at it than others. Like both in terms of like sample availability, logistical ability to send samples out to people, live streaming readiness, and some brands are way ahead of the curve on others than that, and or just reacted quicker. Like there's one brand in particular that we're working with, as I said, on something really cool and really secret that I can't tell you about. That is just absolutely epic. Like I'm really excited to get it out and get it public, because they literally phoned me within a few days of all this happening and said, can we do this? And I was like, yeah, I'll do everything I can to help you. Like that's really cool. Let's do it. So yeah, I mean, you'll hear about that when it's announced, but like some of them were just much more on the ball than others for that sort of stuff. But I do think it's a really interesting direction that the industry was already going into in an amateur way, with some brands beginning to leverage people like Steve and his tweet tastings to their own effect, but not really doing so much of the sort of stuff that you do with community and the other YouTubers do with community really, really well.
Yeah.
Talking of which, community, I've just seen Dom pop up. Hello, Don. So Dom's a local fan. Some of our tastings locally is a friend of mine, and he's tried some of our boxes. I know he had a sherry one and enjoyed that at Christmas, but he comes to our local tastings here. I haven't seen his face for a little while for obvious reasons. So see you, Dom. Another Bristolian.
Yes, pleasure of meeting him at your festival and I helped you out. So it's good to catch him.
Cool. What? Shall we just jump back in on this Glengoyne? I'm not sure about this one. So I consider myself someone to be a Glengoyne fan. I'm trying to remember what specific drams it was that have led me to think that. I think probably the Cask strength is one of them. Definitely.
The Cask strength was the one that turned me on.
The one we've had in the box and is absolutely phenomenal. It's quite expensive, mine, but we had the 18 recently, and that's quite a good sherry gram. Actually, the Glengoyne 18, not remarkably a world apart from the Glenfarclas 18, I would say. This one's new. Do you associate them as being sherry? Because in my mind, they're definitely a sherry-led dram.
They're definitely sherry-led. They mix though, don't they? They have a mixture of the two, I think. So they're not like it's what I just covered the Glengoyne 18 actually, and I said basically like that there's sherry in there, but it isn't like in your face. It's just a part of the profile. The 18 actually was exceptionally good value. When I looked recently, it's about 85 quid, which you can only really find the Talisker 18.
Yeah. So hot tip for people who may not be aware, but like if you find the actual distillery company or brand themselves on Amazon, they are often beating other prices, because even though they have to pay Amazon 15% or so, they like selling direct to customer means they get all the margin back from the wholesaler and from the distributor and from the retailer. So they're able to just compete on price on Amazon versus what they would offer a better price on Amazon most of the time. And Glengoyne are definitely one of the people I've noticed where, like, if you look at their Amazon offer prices, it almost comes close to like their wholesale pricing. Like, it's where you take away the tax, the VAT. So like, it's well worth checking out Glengoyne on Amazon and seeing if how they're priced. Glenfarclas, I think that's through Glenfarclas from memory.
And I think this is a good example. Like, again, why we like Douglas Laing is this is a non-messed with iteration.
Urban Cask, right? I don't actually know the details. I'd have to maybe. Well, I tell you, I don't know. Maybe it says it on here. Yeah, refill hogsheads. To me, that's it's a bourbon cask and one that's already been used. So like, it doesn't have a lot of wood influence on it to me. So you're kind of getting reasonably pure distillery characteristic with just some bourbon influence over the time period. So yeah, I think this comes back to what you said earlier about Glenfarclas. Like, people sort of assume, well, like, if you go up a range in price or age, whatever, they're going to be stylistically similar. Of course, there's core spirit still the same in most cases, unless you're somewhere like Lot Lomond, where they're producing like 11 different spirit styles in one distillery. But otherwise, they're all working with the same raw ingredients. So it's just about their wood and aging policy and how they blend casks together in different styles to make that expression. But that is what really defines how an expression comes together. Like, it's like someone making a recipe. And so if you use just bourbon casks for one of your age statements as a matter of design, then it tastes very different to an older one where you could use a blend of sherry and bourbon or just sherry. So like, don't give up on a range because you don't like one of them, because it's you might be missing out. Sort of the takeaway for me.
Absolutely. We'll probably move on to the next one, but just a quick comment from David. It really made me laugh. It's like, I'd love to see non-messed with on a bottle. Well, if I ever produce my own whiskies or like grab my own bottles, I'll do it.
Then I just need to go and get some more water for a sec because I've run out here. But I'm just going to do my little glass with you before I go. So this is I think this is called an ISO tasting glass. So this is I think technically for tasting wine, like in wine tastings or competitions, but I believe they use these in some of those whiskey judging awards. These ISO wine glasses, so that ISO copeters or tasting glass, I think they're called. But they can be picked up really on the cheap, and they look really nice. They're quite elegant and simple, so they're actually nice to have wine out of as well, or sherry, that sort of thing. So another recommendation for me for the whiskey glass repertoire. I'm just going to go grab some water, mate. So I don't know if you want
to. I've got some questions here, so I'll answer them while you're.
You have to try and answer the questions, and I'll come back.
All right, I'll see you back in a sec. Okay, just soloing off then. So a couple of questions that have come in. New Jam Drinker says, do you feel the Larkfire water? So if anyone's noticed, I've been drinking this little can of water, this Larkfire water. No, is the long and short. I mean, so the water I've been drinking out of my fancy IKEA glass is just a filtered tap water. I've got a Brita filter in the fridge downstairs. I tip it out. I let it go to like room temperature, and it's no different from that to me. I mean, let's have a sip of it now, shall we? I haven't done this yet. Yeah, I mean, it's nice tasting water, and I'm sure there's some scientific value to the mineral contents and things that are in there versus this, which will be heavily filtered. But for me, you know what I'm like with water, you guys. It's a great thing if you're into that. Please crack on with it. But I find that adding any water, it changes it, definitely changes it. But for the better is a big question for me, a big question. Ben Marnock's asking, how does it compare to the 18? I'm drinking the 12-year-old bourbon matured Glenfarclas, which is malty as hell but drinkable, not the normal style. Yeah, hard to say. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I don't know. It's a stupid thing to say, but I wouldn't want to misrepresent either. I agree. I agree with what you're saying. Drinkable, but not normal. All right, Chris is back, so let's unmute and join back in. Oh, you are unmuted. Perfect.
Yeah, I unmuted myself, then you remuted me. Sorry about that.
No, shall we? We talked about this a bit off air, but I'm going in order of box, but the next one's peated.
Shall we? I'm on the fence. Should we put it to the public vote and see?
Okay, yeah, let's do a quick one then. We've got two next. We've got the Glenturret Peated edition at 43%, and then last thing we've got a Glentauchers 1996 22-year-old sherry cask at 54%. Should we do the peated first or the high ABV first?
I see we've got another Dram Team customer join us. Whiskey Wings. Is that Mike?
That's
I
Mike,
get between handles and real person names.
Yeah. Actually, I've got one of his glasses up here. I haven't used it today. It's at the back. But yeah, he's got an excellent Instagram vibe going on and definitely worthwhile doing. And he actually says peated last.
Yeah, it smells pretty strongly peated. So I tend to be in agreement with that. And the other thing is, because this is only a 6 dram, we can put a bit of water in to make it go further.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk. I'm conscious of keeping you longer than we said, but
that's right. I'm having fun.
It's so this one here. I like to describe it, and I think you do as well, because I often when I cover this, I get some people emailing me saying, "Why is it like 5.5 drams?" And I was like, "Well, try not to think of it like that. Try to think of it as 5 drams plus a bonus dram." This is a 10 ml sample, a 1 centiliter sample. And it's usually, I would say, of something of exceptional tasting, and I think I've only not enjoyed one. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but
which one was it? I forgot.
The Cavalan Solis.
Oh, the Cavalan Solis, which is one of my favorite whiskies, and I have
yeah.
Oh wait, reverse the camera. The bottle here.
Yeah.
The Cavalan Solis bottle that I kept. One of my favorites. So exemplifies exactly the point of the box, right? So I've got the story of the 6 dram is that the product started out with 5 whiskies in it. That was what made sense to me. My target price, and please don't get too upset, was 20 quid. Because I thought I'd be able to design a product that could be posted Royal Mail large letter, which cost like 90p. Mm-hmm. These are the sort of pains you go through when you start a business, so you don't know what you're doing. Quickly turned out that, first of all, it was very difficult to get the product compact enough to be large letter, like geekery here. 2.5 centimeters is the maximum thickness. So that was difficult. Now, actually, these will go large letter. And if I just put them into a plain envelope, I could send 2 of them in the post large letter. But I found out that Royal Mail had some archaic restriction on alcohol. So you could put 2 full liter bottles of alcohol of spirit into the post, but you can't put more than 2 containers in any one parcel or letter. So even though they were miniatures, you cannot put 5 miniatures. You can't even put 3 miniatures technically into a Royal Mail letter or parcel. So we had to ditch Royal Mail. We just couldn't do it. And we had to go to courier, and that meant the price went from like initially from 90p whatever I hoped to up like to £4.50. And we started with UK Mail. They wrecked about 20% of our packets in the first month because their couriers were brutes. And we then introduced the wrap that we have for protection. Yeah, I have one nearby. A bit like how Amazon put books in a cardboard wrap. And we switched to DPD because they offered me a good welcome discount, and they were just really good. And they're much, much better. And we've stayed with them ever since. And they're now, as I said, facilitating us starting into Europe. So yeah, I can see Mike saying about shipping olive oil. So very occasionally I do send something personally through the post. And it is normally high-end balsamic vinegar or olive oil samples that I'm sending when I do that. So I think most people in the whiskey industry are familiar with that. So the worst-case scenario is that like they chuck it away. Like the worst-case scenario in America is that it's actually illegal to send certain things with the UPS, well, no, USPS, sorry, United States Postal. So like the Royal Mail will just chuck it away if they find out what it is, and that's not a risk you can really take as a business. So we switched to DPD. So we had to go from that 20 quid up to like 25. And so after the UK Mail, we took on another £1 or more of cost on shipping, and we had to go up to 20. And so I think we quickly went up to 26.99. But like part of the thing was, I was like, well, if we're putting all this cost on, I want to give something back. And now actually it becomes more efficient to send whiskey if you send more of it. So like it cost me £5 to post 5 whiskies, £5 to post 6 whiskies, £5 to post you 25 whiskies in an advent calendar. So the cost per dram starts to get better if you put more whiskey in. So we thought we'll put more whiskey in, but I was like, well, I just don't want to do the same. I don't want to put in another whiskey that's in the same price bracket. So that, well, what else can I do differently? So the idea of the 6 dram was just literally like, we're going to put in something that's different, and like, how can we afford to put in whiskey that costs this much by making it smaller? It's like pretty obvious, right? Just the math. So it's 2.5 times smaller, 2.5 times as expensive on average. And the idea is like, if you've been to a festival, first of all, at festivals, they pour you 10 ml. So people say you can't taste it, but like, why would anyone go to a festival if you couldn't taste 10 ml of whiskey? You can taste it. It's not enough to get really familiar with it. I completely agree with that. And I think you probably would argue the same for 25 ml, because frankly, like, you need to sit down with a dram on more than one occasion to really understand it and learn whether you really like it or learn whether you just had a bad initial experience. But like, yeah, the idea was to actually just, when we put it in, was like, let's give people more value, because we're going to have to put the price up because of the postage, and I wanted to do something different. So it became a sort of USP of doing something that was more expensive, like a dream dram, basically. So that's the idea behind the 6 dram, and they are probably the most fun to pick because it's just you're dealing with a different sort of price range and age category and all that sort of stuff. I see you've tucked into this one, so how's this one working with?
Well, I was trying hard not to, but it's super. I mean, people will know, and I get a lot of grief about my lack of adding water. But I've got a real penchant for high ABV whiskies, and this is a 54%. Yeah, it's huge, but it's like straight away I'm getting like huge oaky, definitely sherry without a doubt.
Gosh, the oak is really prominent on that, isn't it?
Really. But it's not. Yeah, it's in balance with the sherry, which is important for me.
The single cask do. The thing that stands out to me most about the single cask is they have a really cool like brick-shaped square bottle, which is really cool, and like the labelling is really cool. And I'm a bit of a whiskey magpie when it comes to packaging, and I really like theirs. Oh yeah, you can see it there, of course. So
they're kind of new. Aren't they? They've been around for a couple of years, but
yeah, I think they're bigger in other markets. I believe they're very big in Singapore, and it's interesting. Quite a lot of indies have that same imbalance where they start out big abroad, and then their success of having that distribution abroad allows them to grow, and then they become popular over here. So yeah, they're kind of a new kid on the block for me, and we've only started featuring the last few boxes. So like, ironically, you talked a little bit earlier about Scotch heavyweights, which I think was February's box with the everything above 50% or more. Ironically, March's box, Incredible Indies, was not predicated on that premise of having a high ABV, but was significantly higher on average than the Scotch heavyweights, because I think most of them were in like the high 50s and 60s, because we had 2 single casks, 2 secret spirits, both of which were in the 60s, and then I think and then probably the other 2 were like Weems malts. No, yeah, they were. Yeah, I think that rings a bell. I'm not no, Berry Brothers. Sorry, I do so many of these lineups, I get confused. So one of the Berry Brothers was cask strength, and actually was a Glentauchers. So we've gone back to back Glentauchers 6 drams, one from Berry Bros and now one from single cask, which I thought was interesting. And I wish I'd kept some of the Berry Bros. Yeah, that box was storming with the ABV, and there were 2 single casks in that last month. So I'll be interested to see what people made of those. But this one is an absolute bomb.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
They did a bourbon cask version, so they took this. Basically, they have the same mother cask, and they split it, I think, bourbon and sherry. So it would have been fun to put both in, but they both cost this amount of money, so we can't accommodate it in the box, unfortunately. But I'd be interested to try the bourbon one as a comparison for the sherry one.
I've just added a little drop of water to it to see what happens.
Yeah, we've gone in with the water. I know that my tongue's just going to die in the face of high 50s ABV.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, it hasn't ruined it by any stretch of the imagination, but improved it. It opened it out, sure. I don't know. It's a huge whiskey. And
it's got a lot through the middle and the end.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the best single cask the single cask whiskies I've tried so far. And I wouldn't have thought I'd have said that about a sherry cask, for sure.
Yeah, it's a good one. I think this is a good example of something we touched on earlier with when I talked about Diageo, like, and a good example of what Indians bring to the table. Like Glentauchers is blend fodder normally. It's like I can't remember which one, but I can't remember who owns it. I think it might be.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Most of the time it's Chivas or it's Diageo, but I can't remember the ownership of this one off the top of my head because most of them are Glens as well, which makes it all the more confusing. But this one is very good, and it's nice when people rescue casks that don't fit the blending profile for their own bottlings.
I'm going to finish that last little bit. I don't often do that. I thought about putting it in my infinity bottle, but this is for me.
Normally you neck it on upon arrival, don't you? That's your previous modus operandi when it came to 6 dram.
It's one thing I used to say before I started covering these on the channel. I found myself saving these because they were always something really special that I would never try before and probably would never try again. So I ended up saving them, and then I thought to myself, why am I saving something like this? Let's just try it of an evening. Maybe not that night, but certainly within the week. I feel like moving on to the peat. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm up for that. I just need to do my glassware review if you don't mind.
Of course.
So this one, some of you might recognise this. If anyone's ever been to the Whisky Exchange show in London, this is the glass that the Whisky Exchange use. I can't remember it's another copper or a tulip, I would call it.
Call it tulip, yeah.
Measure glass is now how I think they refer to it, which matches their own Dram branding. But this one, as you can see, is from the Whisky show. It says Whisky show on it. So like souvenir from there. I like this one. Good for 6 drams because it's smaller. Good for little sherry measures and things like that. So it's quite delicate. You have to be careful with it, but it works in the same way. You can see with the Caden heads, it's sort of like they're very similar in size and shape, but this one's just got that kind of pebbly, heavy feeling, and this is more like a delicate one. So just let me mix it up. I like that glass though. I've saved my ponciest and most ridiculous glass for last.
Excellent.
Although I would note, other bonus glass, my other water glass today is one of my grandfather's, may he rest in peace, as of several years ago, Stephen Davis. This was one of his, something I inherited from him essentially when he passed away. My family inherited all of his glassware and things, and this is his cut glass, I guess brandy snifter is what I would call it, but like you have to have a very big measure if you're going to use this glass, so it's not one that I use all the time.
No, I'm going to say, I've got this beautiful Cumbria crystal glassware, hand cut crystal glass, but I ordered the best glass I could get, and this is the double old fashioned. So if I pour a normal sized dram in that, it literally disappears.
Yeah. So my brother-in-law, my other brother-in-law, who's actually, he bought a Glentaucher, and I did tell him, like, Joe, if you're, I doubt he's on. He might be watching on YouTube, but I don't know if he knows how to do all the interacting. But I was a bit uncertain about him buying the Glen collection because he's a peat monster of the highest order, and I thought this box is not going to deliver if you're really into peat. But he said he really enjoyed the first two, so that's really good. But he drinks out of a glass like that one you just held up, and he insists he has single measures. And I always thought he got through whiskey quite fast. And then me and James Glen had a dram with him once, a bottle I'd given him for his wedding when he married my sister of SMWS. Well, it was a peaty one. I can't remember what it was now, but it was an SMWS pretty special bottle that I bought for him. And he poured about half of that. And I was like, oh, that's how you get through your whiskey. So yeah. He's basically pouring a solid quadruple of like 60% strength ABV whiskey into the glass for us, like it was a normal everyday dram. And I was like, it was quite funny. But yeah, the glassware, I think the glass was really important. I think it's really fun to be geeky about it. But like, this is now what I think of as my most ridiculous glass. And you'll see why when I attempt to drink something out of it. I would say it was onion shaped. I've heard ruder metaphors used. But it's the 1920s blender's glass, which is sold on the Whisky Exchange. I think probably invented by them. I think maybe Angus McIlraith, who's also known as the Whiskey Sponge. If none of you in the comments have read the Whiskey Sponge, read the Whiskey Sponge. But you'll need to familiarize yourself quite closely with the industry and then read the whiskies once you get the maximum satirical benefit. But yeah, this has got you. Obviously, you can see like it's almost impossible to swirl this out of the glass. Great for nosing. That's really what it's intended for. I'm getting a lovely fruity amount, like just amazing wafts of fruit out of that, which I wouldn't have expected. And the peat for me is quite soft on that. It had a bit more heft to it earlier, but trying to drink from it.
I'm going to put this question away, but we'll come back to this question in a minute, Mike. It's for sure. I mean, it's like, it's one of those ones where, like, if you smell it, you know it's peat. There's no question about it. It isn't too subtle, but it's kind of sweet peat, isn't it? It's like
this is my sort of peated dram. To be fair, like I really like stuff that has a lot of fruitiness and like lightness behind the peat. Not too big into something that's overwhelmingly peaty or too dirty as into like oily or tarry or anything like that with the peat.
I mean, I'm a big fan of that these days, but it isn't my go-to flavor profile. I have to be in the mood for it. So I am looking for that kind of like big dirty flavor these days. But this is, I guess this is relatively cheap. I'd hope
probably 35. It's not expensive. I can't remember the price point. I am actually now decanting because I cannot drink out of this glass. I'm going to have to turn it like vertically upside down. It's such an impractical glass. It's ludicrous. And it costs 25 quid. Woo. It's the only glass more overpriced than the Norland.
Definitely. Well, while you're doing that, I'll go back to this question. Mike says, is there going to be an Irish box at all?
So interesting question. So part of the problem is that Irish distillers who own most of the whiskey that comes out of Ireland, and there's increasingly like a lot of independent or smaller distilleries starting up, like Waterford, like Teeling have their own distillery now. Like previously, like all of the whiskey coming out of Ireland was coming out of 4 places basically, as opposed to like 100 in Scotland. So there might have been more brands than that, but they were just buying whiskey from somewhere else. So they're mainly the big names, Green Spot, Redbreast, are made at Middleton, I believe, which is owned by Irish distilleries who are a subsidiary of Pernod Ricard. So in other words, we don't have permission to use them. And it's unlikely that we'll be able to get permission. So that's a pity, but there are increasingly more small. So we already work with Teeling. Tullamore Dew is part of William Grant and Sons portfolio. Recently, we've just started working with Lambay, which is a new one. I don't actually know where their whiskey is made. I'd like to get there's one associate, Laing, I think would probably be able to get on board. So I could do a bit more work and reach out to a few. And I think we could manage to pull together enough for a box. The problem is then you use them all up in one go. So then you kind of like, so I like to put them into the odd world whiskey box or something around blends, because Irish whiskey is made in quite a different way to Scottish whiskey, and the blending's more normal, and they don't necessarily use all malted barley. So like I think I love Irish whiskey as a category of whiskey, and I'd love to put more of it in the box, but there's just not that much of it, and we don't have enough brand partnerships really to sustain a full Irish box. Like it would be one and done, and then we'd have to sort of go back to peppering it in. Might do it because I love it. But the other thing is that it's a bit of like bourbon or any other more distinctive style of whiskey, like single grain whiskey, where if you are a single malt advocate and that is your thing, there's a decent chance that if I sent Irish whiskey to like everyone in my subscription list, they'd be like, what the hell is this? And that's not true, because a lot of people are really open-minded and more explorative in how they consume whiskey and don't have those sort of prejudices. But we do also have a lot of customers who like focus strongly on Scotch and single malt, so we have to kind of be cognizant of that. So as just one example, we had an absolutely banging blends box a little while ago, which was by far and away the best value for money box we've ever done. Like, so the two entry level things are 2 really good blends from Weems, which were like Hive and Spice King, and then we got a really good price from Berry Brothers and Rudd, and we had their Perspective series, which was a really limited and special release. 21-year-old is this sort of in the main 5, and the 25-year-old is the 6 dram, which is like £180 bottle of whiskey, and the 21-year-old was sort of like a £95 bottle of whiskey, which is normally above what we'd put in. And then we had Campbelltown Lock 21-year-old, which is discontinued, mainly Springbank with a bit of Girvan in it, and absolutely gorgeous and worth about 65-70 quid when you could actually buy it. And then the also discontinued non-age statement version of Campbelltown Lock, which is sort of an old treasured blend. And this person bought one and they got it as their first box in a gift subscription, and as a subscription box, and cancelled immediately and wrote me a really angry email saying, I was expecting single malts. What's this rubbish you sent me? And I sort of like refunded them some of the money and said sorry, and like just left it because I couldn't begin to engage with someone who's that narrow-minded about how they consume whiskey. And they're obviously not meant to be one of our customers, so there's no point getting annoyed with them. But I think you do have to be a bit careful. Like if people are into Scotch and single malt and you send them a whole box of Irish stuff, that you might disappoint people. Now, conversely, I think some people probably have that reaction when they open a World Whiskies box. Yeah, Mike says tosses in the comment there. No comment. Customer's always right, Mike. But we've had some really pleasant surprises from the whiskey drinking audience. We have 2 World Whiskey boxes that are like really positive responses. So they might initially think, well, why is there a Scotch in here? But then they taste like a McMira or a Paul John, or like something that they've not tried before from an international brand, and they're really impressed by it. And I think that's a really good thing to be able to do for people.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm very rarely do I open up one of your boxes and sort of go, I mean, when I say rarely, I mean it might have like happened once or twice when I see a dram that I've definitely tried before or covered, and I think, like whatever. But the stuff that you pick tends to be things that I ordinarily don't have a bottle of. I mean, you're not going out and you're not picking up bottles that have been in the supermarket and things. I mean, maybe
sometimes it's just that it tends to be that just the brands that happen to have like maximum distribution power to supermarkets aren't the ones that we have the best access to, or that we can't buy well. So like I'm really big on making sure we get value for money in the box and maintaining the average budget of the retail price that we put in. And because we can't buy directly from the bigger brands, it just doesn't add up. Whereas if we can buy directly from like Springbank or Glen Moray via Gordon MacPhail, who distribute for them and that sort of thing, we get a much better buying point that allows us to keep the quality of the liquid up. So we put in the odd thing we get on offer. Like we had some Auchentoshan and White and Mackay actually we work with, who do Dura and Dalmore, and they have some really good wholesale pricing. So we put in some of those bigger names you would see in the supermarket, but then just because of the budget of where we're sitting, being around 50 average, you just don't get that much of it in the supermarket, not even in Waitrose. They have a much better selection of single malts than sort of Tesco or Sainsbury's or someone. So we put them in occasionally, and I think they have a place because I think some of them are great. Like I love Talisker Storm, for example, which is available for 25 quid a lot of places. The Freud Quarter Cask is very good, same sort of price point at the right time. Glen Moray we talked about earlier. Like there is some really good stuff at that price point in the supermarkets, and occasionally we put it in the box, but it's just because of the way we buy, and sort of the point of the box is that we won't do too much of that sort of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's just all it's all interesting, like you said. Like when you at the beginning, when you were saying about how you select the whiskies, there's no like kind of corporate choices. You're just picking stuff you want to try, and that translates through to me. Like when it comes through to me, it's all stuff that I want to try as well. Like all of this, I've never tried any of this before, and all of it's been astounding. Really, there's definitely absolutely.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this actually. I think every one is something I would happily have on my shelf, and it's not often. I think the most underwhelming for me personally, personal preference, the Glengoyne, which I think you really enjoyed. So
I definitely enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, where would I place it in all of this? Really, really hard to say. I mean, even like Mike was just saying in the comments, he was most surprised by the Glenrothes 10-year-old. I think that's still the weakest one for me, but I still really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was, I think I preferred it to the Glengoyne 14, but yeah, I was not expecting it to be one that style and two that delicious. So that's really interesting.
Absolutely. I think for me, the winner. It's hard to say. I mean, the single cask was astounding. Probably a bit out of my price range, I should imagine. Without looking, I imagine it's about 80, 90 quid, maybe more. Probably more. It's the 22-year-old, so it's going to be 150, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that is 150 a bottle.
Yeah. But the peated automatically gets bonus points for being peated for me. But other than that, the Glenfarclas 18 was the most surprising for me because it was something I wasn't expecting to enjoy, and it was just fabulous, really
Yeah, that
good.
was really good. I was a bit biased against that. As I said, like one of the customers replied to one of our emails earlier and said, like, oh, I was a bit underwhelmed by that. I really like that. Not the best shaping I've ever had, but certainly a great example of the distillery for me and how I characterize like Glenfarclas.
Yeah.
I think the Glen Moray really surprised me, and I saw that Whiskey Rings Mike there, like it said, like you could do a whole box of Lot Lomond, but that Glen Moray 12-year-old for me actually was quite like a Lot Lomond, like I said earlier, particularly I think like an Inchmurrin. And for people who don't know, Lot Lomond Distillery have like 3 different styles of still. Like they have a traditional swan neck pot still, and they have a Lomond still appropriately, which is like a straight neck pot still basically. So it's quite different how it produces spirit, and then they have actually a column still as well. And between that, they do things like with the peat and with how they do low and high wines, and then they do with that. But there's a really cool diagram that I have somewhere of like all the different spirit styles and what goes into the different expressions. So they more than anyone else can produce a really bizarre range of spirit. But Inchmurrin is to me quite like that Glen Moray. I'm holding it up, I don't read it. It's got like that light fragrancy to it, sort of almost like foam bananas or something. I really enjoyed that. I even enjoyed the peated one, which for me is not normally a go-to thing, but that was quite a nice, gentle, enjoyable peat. I do agree, probably the Glentauchers single cask is just the most outstanding, but like it's hard to compare a £150 22-year-old single cask strength whiskey to like the other stuff. It's just the nature of single cask strength whiskey, right? It's a different beast altogether. So really interesting. I was really happy with that. Personal preference was quite varied styles, but like it hit quite a few things that I like. So I hope other people find the same thing when they drink it.
Yeah, I mean, Mike was saying that because he's already finished his box. I was a little bit delayed in putting this out because ordinarily what I would do is a pre-recorded video, and I was going to do that last weekend and ran out of time, which made me think that maybe I should engage yourself with it. And as was suggested earlier, maybe in the future we'll try and work out a situation where we plan it so far ahead that people can buy the box.
Yeah, I don't see like I'd be happy to do something like this monthly. As I said, it's something I'd like to move towards doing. I'd like to move towards sort of getting our members together a bit more and interacting and just trying different things out. So like I'm all up for doing that. On that note, actually, what I was going to talk about. So anyone who is a customer, including you, Ben, so we're actually rescheduling when we send the box out. So we've traditionally done 15th, and I honestly can't remember why we did that. It was probably just literally the earliest we could produce the box when we started up. We're going to move to the 1st of the month, so we won't be sending a box in May. We'll send on the 1st of June. Right now, partly that also serves an operational function, which is that our bottling had to be relocated from Whisky Broker to Claxton. So we were with Whisky Broker doing our miniatures, and they had to shut down because of not being able to continue with the COVID impact. But Claxton's, who recently opened a bonded facility in Dalswinton outside Dumfries, are people that we work very closely with and are good friends with within the industry, and we're able to kind of take on the bottling. So we had to relocate quite drastically and urgently, and the pipeline is currently so full and they're so busy because they're one of the few bottlers still open that just for a bit of schedule pressure, I've been really wanting to make that switch to the 1st of the month for a while to kind of align our box to the actual calendar months. And it just made good sense to do it now to give us a bit of a breather to get enough whiskey produced so we could actually carry on, because we had, you'll remember we had an issue at the end of last year where when we moved to Whisky Broker in the first place, it was sort of there was a bit of a problem when we started the move as we transitioned from doing it ourselves in Scotland sort of very manually to them taking it on, and we had to ration boxes, and we skipped a couple of months to manage the lack of product. So we won't be doing that now. We'll just be sort of postponing by 2 weeks. But in terms of, we've talked about them tonight, Douglas Laing. So one of the downsides of having moved bottling location is that we've kind of got a slight increase in cost at the moment, which makes it quite difficult for our own product. So I've actually been talking to Douglas Laing recently, and I think that what we're looking at doing, which I was going to do in maybe in July box, but now we might bring forwards to June just for kind of reasons of convenience, is doing a Douglas Laing range. So I've worked with them to get hold of some stuff that they've sort of sold out of, or more interesting stuff from some of their different bottlings. Like, have you seen the ones in the ceramics, the Premier Barrel?
Yeah.
And a few of the sort of lower yield releases. So we're working with them to get some stuff together for June 1st, which will be like a Douglas Laing range, and we'll get something extra special in for the 6 dram, and kind of do a really good variety of Douglas Laing stuff with them. So because they are naturally someone who, just as I said, for the reasons I explained earlier, partnered with a lot, I'm quite excited to kind of put together a box that will focus on one independent bottler and all the stuff they can do, because I think it's a good showcase for that sort of business. So that's what we'll be doing, I think, June 1st. And then we've got coming up after that World Whiskies, and we're almost definitely going to have an Irish one in Mike, so you'll be happy about that. And then I'm looking at another Scotch box for probably August, when we'll be looking at potentially looking at traditional Scotches versus more innovative, disruptive sort of brands, that sort of thing. So we've got some fun stuff in the pipeline, but yeah, looking forward to doing the Douglas Laing collaboration, because it's the first time we've done a direct collaboration with a brand, but they're a really obvious person to do it with, because as you said, like, you've drunk a lot of Douglas Laing over the years, because they have so many varied bottlings of such good quality that they're just a really natural person to go back to all the time. So I'm looking forward to getting that together, just finishing the lineup in the next few days.
Excellent. That's exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to getting the boxes through, as always. And if I can do something, get them covered. No matter what happens, they'll get covered on the channel anyway, whether we do it live or pre-recorded or whatever. But hopefully everyone's enjoyed this run through of this tasting, and this is a really good example of what you're getting. Although this has been, it's all Scotch, isn't it? But it's not always the case. You do a lot of world stuff.
We've been on a sort of strong run of Scotch this year, I think. I don't even know if we've done anything that wasn't. I think possibly in the Scotch heavy, no, because it was called Scotch heavyweights. At one point there was going to be an international dram in that. So yeah, we've actually been on a really long streak of Scotch, which is why I was planning to get a World Whiskies in. So we've got some interesting ones coming up in that, and then probably go a little bit more varied over the months after that. So it's sort of a bit not hit and miss, but like, it's just sort of random to some extent about what theme we choose, and then end up what brands you put in that fit that theme. But recently it has been a bit more Scotch focused.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm a channel that covers anything that can be considered whiskey, whether it's Scotch or world or whatever. So I appreciate the diversity, but I'm also a massive Scotch fan. So you can't, like, it's certainly not disappointing to see Scotch in a box, without a doubt.
Now, like, product market fit is something you have to think about as a business. Like, as I say, like, I think there's some really well-educated, like, modern whiskey drinkers like yourself and people in the comments who really appreciate the variety of the whiskies, the styles of whiskey, like grain or rye or bourbon or whatever. And then also international brands aren't immediately turned off. They know what a blend is and what a good one is, and why it's not necessarily inferior by default. Or in fact never inferior by default, but like, not everyone is like that, and so we do get people asking, like, oh, is it all single malt? Because my boyfriend really likes single malt, and like, honestly, the person asking that question probably doesn't even know what it means. But like, perhaps the boyfriend doesn't even know what it means, right? But like, I didn't know what it meant when I started the business, so I'm not one to judge. But I am running a business that has to sort of serve people's interests, so we do as much variety as we can while staying. I think the kind of marketing jargon I devised for it, which always makes me giggle when I do that sort of stuff, was like single malt centric or Scotch centric and single malt focused, was how I phrased it. But we do like to surprise people with international whiskies and premium blends and something like that. So if you need a line, that's what you can tell people about the Dram Team.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully this is enough to tell people to join, especially if you're UK based. I certainly think it's worth it, and it's been something that I've been a long-standing fan of. But yeah, if you've enjoyed them, check them out. Just in case anyone missed it, I think everyone who's in now has been in for the majority of the time. But I've got a long-standing kind of website where you can get 20% off, but that's been increased to a third. You said this time.
So you get first box of 20. So that's the aspirational price I hoped we would sell at when we started and couldn't afford to sell at. So like, yeah, that's just a nod of the head to you, Vin, as a thank you for arranging this and for everyone for stopping in. So if anyone is interested, give it a try. I'll leave that up until I remember to change it back. So I won't do that now. So yeah, if anyone wants to get involved, try it out. And actually, from my side, really appreciate everyone in the comments dropping in. Nice to see some subscribers in there. Nice to see people dropping in from all over the world, and a few familiar faces and things. So really enjoyed this a lot. It really, for me, is what the product's actually all about. But whiskey in general is my sort of experience about it, chatting about it, talking about what's interesting, talking about it with someone that I'm friends with, and other people taking part in that at some level. So yeah, let's do more of this. Really good fun. Thank you everyone for dropping in.
Yeah, it's been really good to have you on. I mean, it's been a while since we've done a live together, and we should definitely do more. We'll see what everyone thinks about it, but I'm happy to work with you, even if it's not on my channel. I'm happy to work with you on something you do yourself for sure. Yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah, I definitely need some help with video. Not my almost anything marketing or social media oriented is not my forte, which is why we have Ed and Evan and Harry, who's more local here to Bristol, helping with the marketing at the moment, making me up my game. So that's nice. So you'll be seeing a lot more from us online, not just like for marketing reasons, but because I think it adds something for our customers as well. And we'll be increasingly looking at sort of how can we just make the product and being part of what we do more interesting and more compelling for people, so they can kind of take part in stuff like this and learn more about whiskey and learn more about what's in the box each month, because I think that's a really important part of it. So yeah, look out for a bit more from us over the coming months, not just whiskey, but other stuff as well, in terms of experience.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, and thanks to everyone who's sat with us for what was planned at 90 minutes, 2 hours. I mean, it flies.
90 minutes.
Yeah, it really does fly by. And a lot of people have stayed with us the whole time, so that's awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you to like Paul Gibbs, Dom, Bud, Greg, who's just left, I think, but and Ben Marnick, Whiskey Wings, and of course, new Dram Drinker for modding for me this whole time. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, well done.
Those guys out.
Well done.
Check out the Dram Team as well. Awesome.
Yeah. Right, do I need to log off, or are you going to sort me out?
We'll have a little chat afterwards, but I'm going to end the broadcast now. But thanks everyone for checking us out, and I'll see you again. It's Whiskey, and of course, if you do check out Dram Team, you don't have to use the link below. You can just subscribe normally. Let me know if you enjoy this stuff.
It's the cheapest way to start the Dram Team. So I recommend it, but if you want to spend more money, feel free.
Absolutely, I don't think you will see another deal like that for a while now. Well, maybe unless you forget to turn it off, but
yeah,
thanks everyone.
Really nice to see you all. Thank you.
It's been really good. See you guys later.
Bye bye.